Welcome to the Corruption Files Update. This is your quick hit on the latest filings, breaking news, or bombshell developments in the cases that we follow. No fluff, just the facts that you need right now. Let's dive in. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Crime in Court with Heather. This is the Corruption Files, and we are doing another update in the Karen Read case because breaking news, or you've probably already heard by now, because everybody has been talking about it since Friday, that the House defendants, or the McAlberts, or whatever you want to call them, are suing Karen Read and Turtle Boy for defamation, which is like a very high bar to actually win a defamation case. And we already know that Aidan believes that the McAlberts did take the life of John O'Keefe, whether intentionally or not. So that's his belief, and that's not defamation. And we're going to read through the entire 50-page document. So I started this last week, and I'm continuing it because it's such a long episode. So you're going to see it's going to be pieces chunked together. I'm going to look different on different days because this is such a long document. I didn't want to sit and do it all in one sitting. So I'm splicing together different readings of it. So just letting you know that. So if I look different in the next video, that is why. So thank you guys for watching. Let's dive in. Lawsuit that we've all been waiting for, because this now means that Karen Read and Turtle Boy can get all the discovery that they want, and, well, for the most part, and their depositions of the McAlberts, the witnesses, the House defendants, whatever the hell you want to call them, the McAlbert Mafia. They're going to have to answer questions, and Auntie Bev and Michael Morrissey and Hank Brennan and Adam Lally, they're not going to be there. None of them are going to be there to protect them. And in depositions, you have to answer questions, even if there is an objection. So I love this for them. So if you're not already aware, it is the biggest news in Karen Read talk, the circle of people communicating about Karen Read. The big news is the McAlberts have filed a lawsuit against Karen Read and Aidan Kearney, and we're going to read through the 50-page lawsuit together in its entirety. Before we begin, I just want to mention a couple of things. So they filed this in the court, in Superior Court of Barnstable County, which apparently is like in the Cape area. So it is not Norfolk County. Again, they will not have their Norfolk County people to protect them. So I don't know what the decision was as to why Barnstable County. I have no idea if they even have jurisdiction in Barnstable. So there's that. So I'm sure there was some strategic aspect to it, but I don't know. Apparently, the McAlberts also hired an attorney who tried, or did successfully, I think, bankrupt Alex Jones for his whole defamation lawsuit of the school shooting. I can't remember what it was. But so I think that's the guy that they had hired. So this particular lawsuit is only Jennifer McCabe, Brian Albert, Colin Albert, and Brian Higgins. So I don't know why not all of the McAlberts, or Chris Albert, Julie Albert. There were other people there that have that might have some reason to claim defamation. I don't know, but these are the four individuals that definitely have this claim of, they're claiming defamation because of Aidan Kearney and Karen Read creating this whole conspiracy to make them look guilty. That's what this whole thing is going to be about. It's going to be annoying to listen to their BS, but we're going to do that. So let's get started. By the way, I have not read through this. I haven't listened to anybody read through this. This is my first time actually reading it. So I like to be not surprised, but I like to be reading it in real time so that, I'm learning as you guys are learning and we can go from there. So this is the complaint. Introduction. This case arises from a multi-year conspiracy orchestrated by Karen Read and Aidan Kearney to subvert and prejudice the criminal justice process in Norfolk County, Massachusetts. Through a coordinated scheme, Read and Kearney sought to protect and enrich themselves by defaming, harassing, and tormenting the plaintiffs. The plaintiffs would be these four individuals. So John McCabe, Brian Albert, Colin Albert, and Brian Higgins. So they're saying that they sought to protect and enrich themselves by defaming, harassing, and tormenting the plaintiffs who served as witnesses in connection with the Commonwealth of Massachusetts investigation into the death of John O'Keefe and its prosecution of Read for his murder. More specifically, Read and Kearney conspired to defame and did defame the plaintiffs by falsely asserting, among other things, that they were responsible for O'Keefe's death, conspired to conceal their roles in his death, and framed Read for murder. The plaintiffs are now and have always entirely been innocent of any involvement okay, keep telling yourselves that, guys, of any involvement of John's death. We've been through 2 trials. We've seen and heard we've heard a lot of evidence. We probably haven't heard it all because we still get bombshells every now and then. But in this particular case, we have heard a lot. We've heard 2 trials worth of testimony. We've seen 2 trials worth of evidence. And we, the public and the jury, have all decided Karen Read is innocent. She did not hit John. John was not killed by a car. And therefore, if he was not killed by a car, somebody injured him in some other way, or he got injured in some other way and was placed there. So Read's and Kearney's calculated operation to assassinate the character and reputations of the plaintiff has caused incalculable harm, subjecting them to a daily tidal wave of hatred, harassment, and intimidation. With the damage to these plaintiffs has been catastrophic. I can't read. While the damage to these plaintiffs has been catastrophic, Read's and Kearney's lies have also caused a rupture within the Canton, Massachusetts community, poisoning the community's cohesion and discourse. All of this is false, but let's keep going. Read's and Kearney's lies, which were amplified by a vigorous public relations campaign, tainted the criminal prosecution of Read and deprived the O'Keefe family of the Commonwealth of the justice they deserved. Let's not blame it on the officers who have been proven to have committed misconduct and even lost their jobs and have been punished in this case. Let's not talk about that. Let's forget all about their investigation or lack thereof into finding the real killer of John O'Keefe. No. It's Karen Read and Aidan Kearney because they're conspiring to defame and poison the community, apparently. Whatever, this is so ridiculous. The plaintiffs bring this civil action to finally hold Read and Kearney accountable for the wreckage that their conduct has caused and to prove in a public forum governed by the rules of evidence that Read and Kearney individually and collectively pursued a deliberate scheme to spread lies about the plaintiffs, used social media and other amplification means to achieve maximum penetration of those lies and enrich themselves through their ill-gotten celebrity. It can't be the fact that we saw them testify and found them not to be credible. It can't be that. It has to be Aidan and Karen, who obviously made the whole world think they're guilty, right? Come on. This court has subject matter jurisdiction over the action pursuant to MGL 212.3, whatever that is. And then I don't know how to say that. And then the venue is appropriate. Oh, because Brian Higgins resides in Barnstable County. That's why they're doing it there, because Brian Higgins lives there. I guess nobody else lives in Norfolk, right? Oh, well, maybe Colin still does. But it's interesting that they took that. Yeah, Jen McCabe and Colin both still live in Norfolk County. So why wasn't it? I know Brian Albert moved his family, like, I think they go to like New Hampshire or Vermont or something. They went farther because, everybody thinks they're murderers. So they had to move and sell their house and probably sacrifice their dog or Chloe. All right. So the parties. Defendant Karen Read is a resident of North Dighton, Massachusetts on January 29th, 2022. An intoxicated Read struck O'Keefe with the back of her Lexus SUV, incapacitating him and ultimately causing his death, even though multiple biomechanical experts, doctors, and even the person who did the autopsy could not say that John was hit by a car. So already this first, I mean, their arguments are ridiculous because she's been acquitted. So how can this is so amazing to me that they did this, because this is opening them up so badly to more litigation. And basically, I think it was Tim Bradle who said, I don't know, because Christina Rex on X said Turtle Boy's lawyer and didn't say his name. So it was either Mark Betterow or Tim Bradle said that this whole lawsuit opens up Aidan to defend himself against this lawsuit, basically making him prosecute the McAlberts in the process of trying to prove his innocence, which is, it's all going to come out. It's going to be glorious, and I cannot wait. So on June 9th, 2022, Read was arrested after being indicted by a grand jury for second-degree murder manslaughter while operating a vehicle while under the influence of alcohol and leaving the scene of an accident resulting in death in connection with her causing the death of O'Keefe. On July 1st, 2024, a jury failed to reach a unanimous verdict on the charged offenses, and the court declared a mistrial. In 2025, the Commonwealth retried Read, and on June 18th, 2025, the jury convicted Read of driving under the influence of alcohol, but concluded that the Commonwealth failed to prove Read's guilt beyond a reasonable doubt on the remaining charges. Defendant Aidan Kearney, a.k.a. Turtle Boy, is a resident of Holden, Massachusetts. Kearney owns and operates the website tbdailynews.com and is responsible for the content that appears on that website. Kearney also owns and controls the YouTube channel Turtle Boy Live, the Rumble channel Turtle Boy Daily News, the Facebook page TB Daily News, the X account under the handle Dr. Turtle Boy, the Instagram page under the handle Turtleboy_news, and the TikTok account under the handle Turtleboy_daily_news. That's a mouthful. Kearney monetizes the content he publishes on these various platforms and outlets by selling merchandise and advertising, and by asking for donations to his Cash App and the Uncle Turtle Boy. I can't remember. What is that? Not PayPal. What is that? When you have a dollar sign, I'm totally drawing a blank. Cash App and something else. In 2023, well, he has his own, actually, he uses his own like turtle donations. He doesn't use the YouTube one, so he uses something different. So that's what that means, and the Cash App. And in 2023, a grand jury indicted Kearney on witness intimidation charges related to his conduct towards the plaintiffs. The grand jury accused Kearney of harassing the plaintiffs, charging him with 8 counts of witness intimidation, 5 counts of picketing a witness, and 3 counts of conspiracy to intimidate a witness. Plaintiff Jennifer McCabe is a resident of Canton, Massachusetts. McCabe testified publicly and under oath at the trial and retrial of Read. She also voluntarily testified as a witness before state and federal grand juries. She gladly testified to lies so that she could steer the jury away from her and the McAlberts and their responsibility in it. Plaintiff Brian Albert is a resident of Norwood, Massachusetts. Oh, so he still lives in Massachusetts. I thought he moved out of state. I heard that somewhere, but I guess that's not true. I don't know where Norwood is, but maybe it's a different county too. He's also a retired sergeant of the Boston Police Department. Brian Albert testified publicly and under oath at the trial of Read. He also testified voluntarily as a witness before state and federal juries. Plaintiff Colin Albert is a resident in Canton, Massachusetts. Colin Albert testified publicly and under oath at the trial of Read, only the first trial, and he also voluntarily testified as a witness before a grand jury. Plaintiff Brian Higgins is a resident of Sandwich, Massachusetts, and a special agent with the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives. Higgins testified publicly and under oath at the Read trial. He also testified voluntarily at state and federal grand juries. Non-party John O'Keefe was a resident of Canton, Massachusetts, and a Boston police officer. Non-party Alan Jackson was Read's attorney. Non-party David Yannetti was Read's attorney. So now you know they're going to be bringing up Read's attorneys, Jackson and Yannetti, and they're probably going to be trying to slander and defame them in this also. So the only ones that are really guilty of defamation are the McAlberts, because the truth is the ultimate defense, and they're going to win. Karen and Turtle Boy are going to win. So this whole thing is ridiculous. I think people were putting it into Grok. What's the percentage of this being dismissed? And it's like a 75 to 80% chance of this being dismissed before it ever goes anywhere. So there's a whole anti-slap thing that if you're in a lawsuit with somebody, it's difficult to sue them. And defamation also is difficult to prove, because then you have to prove intent with defamation. It's not just, did you lie about that person or say things that were not true about that person? It's, did you knowingly and willingly spread false information about someone in order to slander their character? That's what defamation is. So factual background, on January 29th, 2022, in the middle of a snowstorm, Read struck O'Keefe with the back of her Lexus SUV while she was driving drunk, leaving him to die in freezing temperatures on the front lawn of 34 Fairview Road in Canton, Massachusetts. Read repeatedly told first responders on the scene, "I hit him, I hit him, I hit him," and made other incriminating statements, including telling the police that she did not see O'Keefe enter 34 Fairview on January 29th, 2022. An investigation into O'Keefe's death resulted in the arrest, indictment, and prosecution of Read for this murder. Jackson and Yannetti represented Read in connection with the Commonwealth's prosecution. Shortly after her arrest, what about her other lawyers? We're just going to pinpoint Jackson and Yannetti and not talk about her other lawyers, I guess. Shortly after her arrest, and consistent with her several admissions of liability, Read's counsel, Yannetti, told the court that O'Keefe's death was an accident by calling the charges a tremendous reach and explaining that Read had no criminal intent. What does that prove? Every time a lawyer gets a case, they're going to say there was no criminal intent, or it was an accident, or something to that effect, before they actually look into the evidence. And it was made clear to him within days that Karen Read did not do this. But he didn't know that at that time when he made that comment. And so they're trying to make it seem like that means he's admitting that Karen admitted to guilt or something. I don't know. That's kind of what they're implying there. So in January 2022, Kearney's operation was that of an aspiring internet personality with limited reach in the greater Boston area. Are they trying to be insulting too? Like, he didn't have much of a following, but he did. He already did. He primarily commented on sports and other media reports. That's bull, because he's been reporting on corruption and misconduct by law enforcement, government officials for years. He's been doing that kind of investigative journalism. So that's an outright lie. Kearney's objective was to attract attention to himself in order to build a brand and monetize his audience. How the hell do you know what his objective was? And so what if that was? So what if he had a goal of monetizing himself to make money? Doesn't everybody have to make money? This is the dumbest argument. To do so, Kearney routinely engaged in provocation and courted controversy, like talking about controversial cases where teachers were inappropriate with students, or, government stealing money from government funds, things like that, or taxpayer funds, whatever. Those are the kinds of stories that he was writing about. Cops being hired with criminal records, things like that he was talking about. So this is just to minimize and demoralize who Turtle Boy is as a person and all the work that he's done. While he described himself at times as a journalist, in fact, Kearney has no journalistic training, editorial standards, or oversight. Bitch, nobody does. Nobody needs to have that. Anyone can be a journalist. As long as you go after stories and do research, anybody can do it. You don't have to have a media company to qualify you to be a journalist in any capacity. The launch of the defamation campaign. And we have our first footnote here. It says that this complaint does not include each and every example of Read's and Kearney's defamatory statements and conduct. Upon the conclusion of discovery, the plaintiffs will identify all defamatory statements to be presented at trial. Despite her several admissions of liability, by the time she was indicted and arrested on murder and related charges in June 2022, Read had set in motion a defamation campaign to falsely blame others for O'Keefe's death to escape responsibility for her own culpability. Okay, well, if you're going to sue her, why don't you sue the guy who originally came to Yannetti and told him that somebody in that house did this? Why don't you go sue him? Because he's the one that alerted them to this. Not Karen. She didn't conspire or defame anybody. She was working off of a lead that her attorney received. That's not defamation. It's not defamation to investigate a case that you are being criminally charged for. And when you find out that there's other guilty parties, it's not defamation to come forward and talk about them. This case, or this suit, has no merit. And I think other people would agree with me on that. So where were we? Read set in motion this defamation campaign. Prior to her arraignment, Read falsely denied responsibility for O'Keefe's death, and contrary to her prior admissions, falsely stated to law enforcement officers that she was not responsible for O'Keefe's death. Instead, she falsely claimed that O'Keefe had been beaten up by Brian and Colin Albert. Karen Read during arrest. We're all in on the same joke, right? They provide that video, and there she says his face looked like a punching bag or something. I can't remember what her exact lines were, but so that was partly, or they're putting that into evidence or citing that as one of the reasons. where she's falsely claiming that they did this when the evidence seems to show that this would be more likely than her hitting him with her car. Read knew this statement was false and that Brian Albert and Colin Albert had nothing to do with O'Keefe's death because she knew that she had hit O'Keefe with her car, causing his death. Good luck proving that. Read's false accusation against Brian Albert and Colin Albert was recorded on police body cameras and released to the public during a pretrial hearing in April 2024. To facilitate the spread of and publication of her lies, Read found and enlisted Kearney. No, she didn't, actually. Somebody was an intermediary between Kearney and Read, and they didn't even talk for a while in the very beginning. Kind of to avoid some kind of, impropriety or something that they're trying to imply here when there was none. She was a subject and he was writing about her, and he was communicating through a woman named Natalie. Natalie was I use the word loosely. Okay, I'll say acquaintance, not a friend. And Natalie, I guess, reached out to Karen after the charge. She heard about the charges or whatever, and they started talking again. They went to college together. And so Karen was speaking through Natalie to Aidan, and then she would communicate to Aidan, and that went on for months. So for them to say that she went and sought out this Kearney, I think it was Natalie too, who was like, we need to find somebody to, report about this for you. So I think it might have even been Natalie who reached out to him. I have no idea. But I do know that it wasn't like Read was just enlisting the help of people to defame people. I don't, you know what I'm saying? Like she was looking for help too, because the news wasn't reporting on it. Major stations weren't reporting on it. She wanted local somebody to anybody to report on it at that point. When you're fighting for your life and that's and nobody's helping you, you would feel awful, I would think, in that situation. So I'm sure having Natalie and Kearney was helpful, and getting that out was probably such a relief. But it sucked because every time they came out with something, then the Commonwealth would just come up with some ridiculous lie, and we'd just keep going on and on and on. Like this thing. As of April 2023, Kearney and Read, through an intermediary and Read's counsel, began communicating with one another to further Read's defamatory scheme against the plaintiffs. Kearney described the intermediary as a copy and paste vessel that just sent messages between him and Read. That's according to the interview of Turtle Boy when he was on Andrea Burkhart's show. Read used an intermediary and her counsel to correspond with Kearney to conceal the defendant's relationship and to create bias upon which she could plausibly deny her role in Kearney's false claims. Pursuant to this scheme, Kearney would publicize and widely disseminate Read's false claims about the plaintiffs and others in an effort to destroy the reputations of these individuals so that Read could evade responsibility for causing the death of O'Keefe. As part of this scheme, Read sought to launder defamatory material by gratuitously including it in pleadings filed with the court. For example, on April 12, 2023, Read, through her counsel, filed a discovery motion for a second time to obtain Brian Albert's phone, in which she falsely stated that Brian Albert and Colin Albert were responsible for O'Keefe's death and that McCabe was the mastermind who covered it up. Read knew these statements were false. Well, first of all, your first problem is that she said it in a court filing, so that doesn't meet the burden of standard for defamation. Anything you say in a legal filing, it doesn't count as defamation because it's protected. So, yeah, that's their first problem. Secondly, we know now because we did get some of Brian Albert's texts and things. We know that Brian was texting Brian Albert and Brian Higgins were texting during the night. And maybe if we had had Colin's phone and Brian Albert's phone and all the phones in the house, instead of Proctor putting the warrant in for only Android phones instead of iPhones, when he knew that everyone in the house had iPhones. So he put in a search warrant for Androids, came up with nothing. Therefore, oh, well, we tried, but the people in the house, we didn't know they didn't have iPhones. So, or they had iPhones, whatever. So there goes that data because it was never recovered at the time of the crimes. So we won't know at this point, probably ever. They're saying that that Brian and Albert was the mastermind and McCabe was the mastermind who covered it up. Read knew that was false. Uh, Read, through her counsel, also attached several non-public documents to the filing that had zero relevance to the narrow issue before the court. The purpose and part of those extraneous non-public documents was to convey that surreptitiously to Kearney, who then would amplify the public dissemination of the defamatory material, all in furtherance of the defendant's defamation scheme. Huh? So she says something in a court filing or her lawyer says something in an argument and you claim it's defamation, but it's protected because it's in a court proceeding. So you're wrong there. And then because Aidan reports on it, that's more defamation. That's Karen putting out that information for Kearney to go to disseminate to more people. When everybody's eyes were already starting to watch this because of all the lies and inconsistencies that were coming out. So there's that. Read through counsel. The purpose in part of those extraneous non-public documents was to get Kearney to defame them. Okay. So, for example, Reed attached an unredacted copy of the Canton Police Department's incident report that listed the private addresses, cell numbers, and social security numbers of, among others, the plaintiffs. Reed made this filing in direct violation of Massachusetts Supreme Judicial Court Rule 124 and did so for the purpose of giving this information to Kearney. Good luck proving that. Good luck proving that so that he could disseminate her false claims. Get out of here. This is so ridiculous. I'm on page 7 out of 50. This is going to get my blood boiling by the time we're done. According to this footnote 4, it says Massachusetts Supreme Judicial Court Rule 124 prohibits the filing of personal identifying information in court documents without appropriate redactions to reduce the possibility of using such documents for identity theft, the unwarranted invasion of privacy, or other improper purposes. Okay, so maybe they were supposed to redact it. I don't know the exact rules. But there were no identifying names. So the only reason that Aidan found out who some of the numbers were because he called them. But other than that, and he called them live on stream, and I think one was Julie Albert, and one was maybe Proctor, but Proctor didn't answer. Julie did. This is one of the funniest times. When she's just sitting there screaming at him. It's one of the funniest things on Turtle Boy history. Anyways, so that's what they're talking about. But there were no identifying names. So if there were things like that, it didn't identify anybody personally. And I guess, I don't know what the specifics are as to redactions, but it didn't say a name for that, like you can't identify who it was unless you actually called them and heard a voice on their voicemail, which is what Kearney did. So After this filing, Read, through her intermediary, followed her April 12th filing to Kearney for the purpose of Kearney publishing and widely disseminating her false statements. With encouragement and direction from Read, Kearney published his first blog days after receiving the false statements from Read. Indeed, prior to Kearney's April 18th, 2023 publication, Kearney shared his first blog with Read through her intermediary, who provided Kearney with dozens of corrections, which Kearney understood to be from Read. After Kearney received and adopted those corrections, Read, through his intermediary, texted Kearney amazeball sauce and thank you so much. Okay. I didn't know we were saying still amazeballs, but there you have it. Then on April 18th, 2023, the defendant's defamation campaign went public when Kearney published the first two parts of his Canton cover-up series. As of the date of this filing, this series has 545 parts. It's beautiful. I love it. And they're all about the McAlberts or people related to them. Yeah, so in part one, Kearney stated that Jennifer McCabe did not kill John O'Keefe since she is not physically capable of that. Brian Albert, Colin Albert, and the dog were more capable of that, and Brian Albert had the motive. McCabe was just the quarterback of the cover-up. It's his opinion. That's what he believes. Proves that he doesn't believe that, because he's believed that ever since episode number 1. He hasn't wavered. You're not going to prove that it's false or that he intentionally lied or whatever. He also explained that Jennifer McCabe would never have been able to cover up this murder without the assistance of law enforcement. That's another good point. Get out of here. Jennifer McCabe would never have been able. Oh, sorry, I just read that. Kearney admitted that he made these statements based on beliefs relayed to him by his sources. And in Kearney, Canton cover up 1. They're just citing which one they were talking from. Although not identified at the time, these sources were Read and her legal team. In part, but he had other sources too. Those weren't the only sources he had that were helping him with this case. In part 2, Kearney posted screenshots of people's messages to him that were critical of his defamatory statements. And they cite which episode that is. Okay. Or blog post. He made no effort to redact the names and proceeded to publicly mock them. Kearney claimed that the most people are shocked and outraged about the mountain of evidence indicating that O'Keefe was killed by fellow BPD Sergeant Brian Albert, his nephew Colin Albert, and possibly others. In reality, this blog post by Kearney, like numerous other defamatory statements that he made, was funneled by Read to her accomplice. Kearney with knowledge that he would publish it, but he believes it. So even if she was giving him false statements, which she's not, she believes it too. He believes these things that he's publishing. So there's no defamation because, again, you have to prove that they intentionally put out false or misinformation about you. You have to prove that their intentions were to defame you, to say untrue things about you. That was their intention. But in this, you're going to find that Karen and Aidan wholeheartedly believe that individuals in that house did something. So to Fox News, Kearney later explained that after he published the beginning of his Canton cover-up series, his blog exploded. He had a record-setting audience with over 500,000 views. And they cite where he says that, what episode he says that. Elsewhere, Kearney explained that when he would first go live on his YouTube channel, he would usually have about 300 live viewers. But he had over 2,000 on his first night during his first live stream about the Canton cover-up. With this newly found audience, Kearney was now able to disseminate Read's false narrative to an even larger audience as Read intended. Indeed, given the success of the first show at publishing and disseminating Read's false narratives to a wider audience, Read's intermediary told Kearney that Read's counsel Jackson and Unetti wanted to speak directly with Kearney. Conversation between Kearney and Read's counsel occurred on April 20th, 2023, in which they spoke about Read's campaign. Kearney secretly recorded that conversation. 2 days after speaking directly to Read's counsel on April 22nd, 2023, did he do that? I don't know if that's true or false or not, but it's a one-party or two-party consent state, which means you have to get both parties to consent. And if you are recording someone unknowingly, that's not giving consent. So that would be a crime. So I don't know if it's true or not that he did record that, but that's they're trying to maybe get him on some crime there. I don't know. 2 days after speaking directly to Read's counsel on April 22nd, 2023, Kearney made additional false statements at the direction of Read. In episode 575 on his weekend live show, Kearney repeated Read's false claim. I love how they just keep saying it false because whatever, that O'Keefe was killed inside that house during a fight with Colin and/or Brian Albert. During the show, Kearney also used the phone numbers that Read and her counsel intentionally made public. Prove it that they made it intentionally public in their April 12th hearing, or motion, sorry. Kearney used those numbers to call McCabe and Brian Albert and directly accuse them both of a cover-up. Kearney's voicemail left on Brian's phone asked, "Did you kill John O'Keefe? Or was it your nephew, Colin? And are you covering for him? How did your dog get downstairs and begin biting O'Keefe?" Those are questions. That's not harassment. That's not anything other than him doing some journalism right there, asking questions. We can't ask, did Brian have anything to do with it? We can't ask. I know, God knows that the law enforcement handling this case didn't ask, but can we, the public? I guess not. I guess that's a crime too. Later, in April 22nd, 2023, in his show, Kearney shared images of the Canton Police Department's incident report, distributing to his thousands of followers the private addresses, phone numbers, and social security numbers of the plaintiffs. As a direct result of Kearney's publicizing their personal identifying information, which he received from Read, the plaintiffs, who are not generally recognized or responsible for O'Keefe's death, I love how they got to throw that in there, began to experience disturbing levels of defamation, harassment, and abuse from members of Kearney's audience. Prove it. And even so, doesn't matter. It does not matter. Freedom of speech, baby. This is exactly what Read intended when she began to use Kearney to disseminate and publish her false story. Prove that too. Indeed, minutes after Kearney's April 22nd, 2023 broadcast ended, Unetti, who was watching the live broadcast, messaged Kearney congratulating him, saying, "That was priceless, dude. Great effing show. Really enjoyed the turtle reporting." Yet Read and her counsel repeatedly deceived the public about Read's coordination and relationship with Kearney, in part because they knew that using Kearney as a defamation mouthpiece could subject Read to civil liability for defamation and related civil misconduct. For example, during a September 2023 Boston Magazine interview, Read and her counsel stated that they had never been in contact with Kearney. They just cite the source for that. This statement was false and intended to hide the fact that Kearney was carrying out Read's defamatory scheme. It's not a law that you can't lie about talking to a journalist when you're fighting for your life in a case. That's not a thing. Like, okay, so she said that she didn't talk to Kearney. Originally, she didn't. She started out not talking to him, and then she did. And so what? Doesn't matter. And it doesn't matter that she lied either. That doesn't prove anything. And it doesn't mean that she conspired with Kearney to lie about them. And her defense of putting out third-party suspects is a perfectly good defense. And also, how does that work? If you imply some third parties in your defense of a criminal trial, and then they try to turn around and sue you. I think that's the whole purpose of the anti-SLAPP stuff. So you can't do this. Basically, she's being sued for defending herself effectively, if that makes any sense. Moreover, 20 months after telling Kearney that his April 22nd, 2023 show accusing McCabe, Brian Albert, and Colin Albert of being involved in the death of O'Keefe was a great effing show, Unetti disavowed Read's relationship with Kearney. In an address he gave at Boston College Law School on November 11th, 2024, regarding Read's first trial, Unetti said he had concerns about Kearney and that he was someone you want to keep at arm's length. Unetti also said, notwithstanding his undisclosed direct and indirect communications and coordination with Kearney, that Kearney's tactics are not the tactics of a refined defense attorney. Again, so none of this means anything. None of this is a crime. None of this proves anything. I'm so confused why they're bringing up this garbage. Like, they're just throwing anything in here. We're 10 pages in, guys. Similarly, Jackson publicly denied communicating and coordinating with Kearney. In an October 18th, 2024 interview, Jackson denied involving Kearney in Read's public strategy. Yet, during that same interview, Read acknowledged she had communicated with Kearney frequently, but she limited that disclosure, claiming that the two only spoke in the months leading up to her criminal trial in March of 2024. On April 24th, 2023, Kearney published part 10 of his Canton cover-up series, wherein he again accused McCabe of covering up a murder and pretending to be a compassionate person while a completely innocent woman faces decades in prison. Now they're just citing all the different episodes and things where these things are being cited, or the sources. In response, Read, through her intermediary, messaged Kearney stating, "Please tell Kearney the article might be the best so far." Kearney responded, "Really? That from Read?" The intermediary replied, "Yep." So she's complimenting his work. That doesn't mean that she's guiding it or telling him what to write. Nor does that mean that she's knowingly and intentionally giving him false statements to publish. So prove that. This is crazy. Continuing on. Since April 2023, Kearney has published 545 parts to his Canton cover-up series, along with countless other pieces of content, including posts on X and YouTube, falsely claiming that the plaintiffs were responsible for O'Keefe's death. Kearney's content has spanned thousands of tweets, hundreds of blog posts, hundreds of YouTube videos, and countless other public statements across a variety of platforms. Kearney has also continued to spread his harmful defamatory statements in interviews with multiple sources. The conspiracy continues. Read and Kearney continued communicating before, during, and after her trials to coordinate their defamation of the plaintiffs, or maybe to commiserate with one another because they were going through the same they were being persecuted by the same people. Maybe that's why they continued to have a relationship. And he grew fond of her because he was trying to help her, and they did grow a relationship, a friendship, which probably is going to regain strength because of this stupid lawsuit. Which I cannot wait to see it blow up in their faces, these dumbass McAlberts. Conspiracy continues. Read and Kearney agreed to act in concert and use their defamation of the plaintiffs to subvert the Commonwealth's prosecution to attract an audience and to monetize that audience and their celebrity. Get real. This shit happened. They became celebrities because of the Commonwealth and the McAlberts, basically, because of the craziness of this case. They're only celebrities because they're being persecuted by the Commonwealth. In furtherance of this scheme, Read regularly funneled non-public information to Kearney using tradecraft such as intermediaries so that Kearney could selectively publish at Read's behest. Kearney has always said on the record that no one controls what he writes. Certain non-public materials for the purpose of casting false suspicion on the plaintiffs and away from Read. Read instructed Kearney to falsely claim that he had not received information from Read when in fact he had done exactly that. For example, on April 23, 2023, despite having already publicly accused Colin Albert of O'Keefe's murder at Read's direction and encouragement, Kearney inquired of Read's intermediary regarding how Read knew that Colin Albert was ever at 34 Fairview on January 29, 2022, after O'Keefe allegedly arrived. In response, Read, through the intermediary, responded, Brian and Nicole and Chris and Julie all testified he was there, but I can't send grand jury testimony because it's sealed. That statement was not true, as no witness ever testified that Colin Albert was at the. Yes, they did. Don't lie in your report or in your filing. I believe it was one of them that testified to it. I can't remember who, but somebody did testify to that at the grand jury proceeding. That same day, Read also informed Kearney through the intermediary about the details of an alleged non-public ongoing separate investigation apparently related to law enforcement's investigation of O'Keefe's death. In a message to Kearney, Read, through the intermediary, stated, note, public, or not public, the feds have been involved longer than anyone is likely guessing. So Kearney, in a message to Kearney, Read said that through Natalie. Moreover, on December 1st, 2023, Kearney posted a YouTube video in which he included audio that had been recovered from O'Keefe's phone by investigators. Wearing a Jackson Unity 2024 shirt that is for sale on his website, Kearney played audio from a voicemail that Read was leaving for O'Keefe at the time that she found O'Keefe's body. Incidentally, she was leaving for O'Keefe. That doesn't make sense. Kearney played audio from a voicemail that Read was leaving for O'Keefe at the time that she found O'Keefe's body, incidentally capturing McCabe calling 911. At that time of Kearney's YouTube video, only the Commonwealth, Read, and Read's legal team possessed the audio file. Oops. Eventually, Read and Kearney started communicating directly for the purpose of sharing information, coordinating the timing of defamatory publications, and aligning Read's litigation strategy with their shared public defamation campaign. Sure. Eventually, Read and Kearney started communicating directly for the purpose of sharing information, coordinating the timing of defamatory publications, and aligning Read's litigation strategy with their shared public defamation campaign. To do so, Read utilized Signal, an encrypted messaging system that avoids detection and aids deletion of communications. Read and Kearney ultimately exchanged over 189 phone calls, totaling more than 40 hours in 2023 alone, not including the countless messages exchanged through Signal. In conspiring with Kearney to defame the plaintiffs, Read knew that Kearney's and her statements blaming the plaintiffs for the murder of O'Keefe were false because in reality she was responsible for the death of O'Keefe. How can you... I am baffled that some high-powered attorney actually took this case and is saying the things that they're saying in this, because how can you say that she knew that her statements were false when she didn't do it. And we've had two juries that could not and would not convict her of the crime of killing John O'Keefe. So they knew it. The rest of the world watched. We all know it. Yet that's what they're trying to say, is that she knowingly gave false statements to Kearney to defame him, or to defame the House defendants. In furtherance of the scheme on May 3rd, 2023, Kearney met with Read, Jackson, and Yannetti for the purpose of coordinating Kearney's extrajudicial defamatory publications with Read's litigation and media strategy. The same day, and after the meeting with Read and her counsel, Kearney posted a YouTube video reacting to Jackson's press conference after a court appearance. So he did that all the time. Every time there was a hearing or anything in court, we all talked about it. It wasn't just Kearney. So why are they just going after Kearney and not, I don't know, the Massachusetts State Police and the Canton Police who didn't do their job investigating this? During this video, Kearney stated John O'Keefe was murdered by Brian Albert and Colin Albert, and that freaking dog and every other single person in that house who remains quiet to this day and participated in the lie, they're all guilty of murder. As far as I'm concerned, they're participating in it. You know what absolves him of any defamation? As far as I'm concerned, right there. It's in his statement that it's his opinion. So that's not defamation. As far as I'm concerned, they're all guilty. I agree. They're all freaking guilty because any one of them could have told the truth and they didn't. They conspired to frame an innocent woman. They're inviting in it. They're participating. Sorry, I don't know where I got inviting. They're participating in it by accusing every other single person in that house. Kearney intended to include McCabe and Higgins in his defamatory statement, a fact that his followers would have understood in light of prior publications. So you're just going to say that's who he means without asking him who he means or whatever. On May 24th, 2023, in conjunction with publishing part 39 of his Canton cover-up series, Kearney published a YouTube video reacting to Jackson's press conference following another court appearance. In the video, Kearney stated Jennifer McCabe and Brian Albert were involved. They are covering it up. In a subsequent blog post, he continued, the McCabes have the look of evil in them when you see them in person. So, these are all opinion, and he can back it up that this is what he believes. These are people with no shame and aren't the least bit deterred by the fact that millions of people know that they participated in the murder and subsequent cover-up of the murder of a Boston police officer. Days later, on May 30th, 2023, Kearney published part 43 of his Canton cover-up series, wherein he discussed McCabe yet again, referring to her as Horseface. I'm sorry, that's really funny. She does have a horse face. And reposting a video that Kearney previously took confronting McCabe and calling her a cop killer. That was when she was leaving a court hearing. I think that was like one of the last court hearings they ever went to before trial because Kearney showed up and called her a cop killer. Notably, the blog post covered the denial of an ex parte harassment prevention order that McCabe sought against Kearney in Stoughton District Court based on his repeated public harassment of her. It wasn't harassment because the judge denied it. So it wasn't harassment, but yet they're classifying it as harassment, even though the harassment prevention order didn't get approved. But they're still classifying it as harassment. However, McCabe's HPO request was not public information. Instead, Kearney received this information directly from Read's counsel, Yannetti, who sent a text message to Kearney that McCabe's request for an HPO had been made and denied. In particular, Yannetti wrote to Kearney, HPO denied. To me, that just sounds like information being provided, not necessarily like they're colluding to, conspire to make up these lies. He's relaying information. HBO denied. I mean, what else would he say about that? Anyways, then on June 6, 2023, McCabe traveled with her husband to attend their children's sporting event in Billerica, Massachusetts. Kearney traveled to the same event at Read's behest with the purpose of accosting the McCabes. Prove this because he went on his own accord and he doesn't do anything that he's being told or that people tell him to do. So he went to that, what's the name? What's that game? Lacrosse. Lacrosse. He went to this lacrosse game without Read telling him to go, but you see how they're like, oh, Read told him to go there. How do you know that? He never said that. He went there on his own to go confront the McCabes. So Kearney traveled to the same event at Read's behest with the purpose of accosting the McCabes, which he did in a video that he posted online. I like how they say accosting. The only people that actually laid hands on anyone was Matt McCabe laid hands on Turtle Boy. But he's the dangerous one because he's got a camera. Okay. Kearney then wrote a blog post about the interaction stating Jen and Matt McCabe do not deserve to live a normal life and pretend that they weren't involved in murdering a Boston police officer. In a subsequent video, Kearney again addressed his harassment of the McCabe family, stating, I went to her kid's lacrosse game and made a scene there and got kicked out because I kept calling her a cop killer. None of that's illegal. Nothing here so far is illegal. We're 15 pages into a 50-page document. Nothing is illegal here. On July 23rd, 2023, Kearney met with Read and Jackson again in person. The purpose of the meeting was for Read, Jackson, and Kearney to meet with a national CBS News correspondent over dinner at a steakhouse in downtown Boston to discuss Read's criminal case. This meeting occurred the day after a rolling rally organized by Kearney took place where nearly 50 cars drove in tandem through the streets of Canton expressing their support for Read. Again, not illegal. During the rally, Kearney stopped at the homes of Brian Albert and McCabe, who was home at the time, shouting into a bullhorn that Brian Albert and McCabe were covering up O'Keefe's murder. Kearney's behavior at the rally enjoyed the support of Read and her legal team. Indeed, the day of the rally, Yannetti messaged Kearney, thank you for your continued support. What is he supposed to say? That doesn't mean he colluded with Kearney to say to do this rolling rally and to go and accost the McCabes or whatever they think that happened. People don't like them because of the facts that came out in this case, not because of Turtle Boy, not because of Karen. It's because of their own behaviors and actions and words. That's why people don't like the McCabes. Yet they're here conflating like witness intimidation, which isn't actually witness intimidation, but they're trying to make it seem like they're intimidating him or them. But they're trying to conflate like witness intimidation between harassment, which this whole thing just has no legs. Let's just say that this thing is going to get dismissed. The next day, Kearney hosted his weekend live show on YouTube. During his show, Kearney stated that Jen McCabe killed or helped to kill. Let's keep it a buck. That's what she did. She killed John O'Keefe. He proceeded to question why O'Keefe's family was associated with McCabe by stating Jen McCabe killed her uncle and then you're escorting her to the freaking orientation and Jen McCabe killed your son. She fucking killed him. She did. And then made friends with the O'Keefes so that they wouldn't question her behaviors and actions in this case. And it worked somehow. I don't know. Because if I was the O'Keefe family, I wouldn't be talking to the McCabes at all after trial, after what happened, after all the things we learned. On August 9th, 2023, Kearney published part 96 of his Canton cover-up series. He began the blog post by explaining the movement for justice for John O'Keefe and Karen Read continues to grow by the day. Although Turtle Boy was the first media outlet to really dig deep into this story, it has taken on a life of its own independent of our award-winning journalism. The Facebook group dedicated a discussion of this topic nearly 20,000 members and is one of the more active groups that you will see on the platform. In his post, sorry, I'm distracted because my dog's got something in his mouth. I gotta go see what it is. It was just a bone. He was okay, but I couldn't tell what it was from here. So he began the blog post by explaining the movement for justice for John O'Keefe and Karen Read continues to grow by the day. Although Turtle Boy was the first media outlet to really dig into... Wait, I read that, right? It has taken on a life of its own. I did read that. In his post, Kearney bragged. Start over. In his post, Kearney bragged about the fact that he was able to amass his followers with well over 100 cars and at least 200 to 300 people scattered everywhere in front of the McCabe home. He included pictures of himself wearing a free Karen Read t-shirt next to someone wearing a t-shirt sold by Kearney. So? What are they doing? Like, nothing in this so far. We're at item 58 of the lawsuit. Nothing they've done so far is illegal. Nor can they prove that Aidan and Karen were conspiring together to put this narrative out. Karen lambasted the Canton police chief by stating, "It's disgusting and pathetic that the public official is treating a cop killer like the victim of a crime." This is the problem. The McCabes and Alberts are treated as royalty in this town, and they know that the police will go out of their way to protect them. This is why they felt so emboldened to kill a man, frame a woman, and think that they could get away with it. Kearney stated, "It's painfully obvious to anyone with a brain that the McAlberts, or the McCabes and Alberts, murdered John O'Keefe." He makes valid points. All of those things he said are accurate. On September 5th, 2023, Kearney directed remarks in a YouTube video towards Chris Albert, the father of Colin Albert. He bragged, "I go down to your pizza shop and I stand out there for an hour and I yell shit about your son. I just shit all over your child, Chris. I go down there and I shit all over him and accuse him of some of the most heinous things possible, and I affect business. People don't want to go into your business because of the things that I'm saying. I'm telling cars going by what your family did and what you're being accused of and what you've done to cover this thing up and what a scumbag you are and how you don't pay your bills." That was a long reason why to do it. But that was a funny segment where he stood out and said blood pizza on one of his signs. By early September 2023, Read's team was concerned that the police were potentially going to charge Kearney with witness intimidation. If that were to happen, Read's counsel, Yannetti, expressed concern to Kearney that if that happens, then a judge prohibits you from having contact with witnesses. This prospect concerned Read, Yannetti, and Jackson since they feared silencing Kearney would impact the defendant's campaign against the plaintiffs. Indeed, on September 9th, 2023, Yannetti messaged Kearney regarding the plaintiffs, stating, "These bastards deserve all the scorn we are giving them." With Kearney's silence, the scorn Read intended to incite might diminish. What? Okay. In addition to using Kearney as a tool to seed the public discourse with defamatory material, Read, through her counsel, also hired a private investigator, Sarah Ness. Ness had previously worked with Jackson in connection with his representation of disgraced sex offender Harvey Weinstein and was deployed in that case to discredit victims of Weinstein's crimes. On September 17th, 2023, at the direction of Read and Jackson, Ness visited the home of Higgins. Read and Jackson directed Ness to question Higgins and other witnesses using tactics similar to those used against witnesses and victims in the Weinstein criminal trial. While Ness confronted Higgins, who Read and her counsel knew were represented by counsel at the time, Read and her counsel watched from a blacked out SUV with Read texting Kearney in real time about Ness's efforts. Sorry, in the car with the lawyers, stirring shit up again. To me, that just sounds like they're communicating with one another and kind of keeping each other abreast of what's going on with one another's lives. That doesn't mean, to me, it's like she's saying, sorry, I didn't get back to you right away or something, or sorry, I'm so short because I'm in the car busy doing something. She's not even explaining what she's doing, yet they're like, oh, they're in cahoots for sure. When Higgins refused to speak with Ness, Read texted Kearney again, this time seeking the address of Sarah Levinson, another witness who would ultimately testify against Read. Following Higgins' refusal to cooperate with Ness, the defendants directed additional defamation and defamatory conduct on him. As a federal law enforcement special agent with covert undercover responsibilities, Higgins suffered profound damage to his career as a result of the defendant's false and widely publicized statements that Higgins was involved in O'Keefe's murder. We saw the footage of him doing suspicious things outside of the Canton police station that night. We've seen him testify since, and his answers are very questionable, very inconsistent. Why did he throw his phone and his SIM card? Why did he break it and throw it away in a military base if he's so innocent, right? So, but his job was only threatened because Kearney and Karen were talking about him being possibly involved, right? Not the fact that maybe he really was doing some shady things and maybe his superiors are like, we can't trust this guy. He's been on like desk duty since the first trial. That's not our fault. Maybe they saw him testify and they're like, you know what? We don't think we can trust you anymore. Possibly. Then put him on desk duty. Where was I? In addition, due to Read's and Kearney's defamation, individuals have traveled to Higgins' residence for the purpose of taking photographs and videos. No, it's not because of Karen or Kearney. It's because you guys lied. You went on a national platform, which was you testified where there was a national platform, and you lied under oath. And we all saw it with our own eyes. And that's why we're against the McAlberts. Nothing to do with Read or Kearney and how they made us feel about the defendants, or the House defendants, whatever you want to call them. It was actually our own minds that came up with the conclusion that these people are dishonest. We didn't need Kearney and Read to tell us that. They just were. Kearney was outspoken. Karen wasn't really talking at the time, not until really trial. In addition, due to Read and Kearney's defamation, they traveled to Higgins' place and took photographs. Higgins has been surveilled, and individuals inspired by Read's and Kearney's defamation campaign have trespassed and vandalized his property. Dude, you're a public figure. It doesn't have anything to do with Kearney. It's because you guys testified and lied. You're now a public figure known for lying. Good job. That's your reputation now. Kearney himself has personally harassed Higgins by visiting Higgins' residence on multiple occasions for the purpose of confronting him and generating content to be published on platforms Kearney controls. I only know of one time where Aidan actually drove past Higgins' home that was after Karen's acquittal, and it was a big nothing. Like, there was nothing. He didn't go there to confront him. They drove past. That was it. On September 19th, 2023, Kearney hosted his weekend live show. In his show, Kearney stated, what I'm saying right now is I'm not saying that this is a matter of opinion. I'm saying this as a matter of fact that Jen McCabe participated in killing and planning to kill and cover up the murder of John O'Keefe. I am saying that is not my opinion. That is fact. he went on to taunt McCabe by exclaiming, Jen McCabe participated in killing John O'Keefe, so sue me. Why don't you just sue me? Because you did it. Because she did it. That's why. Because she did it. And you freaking idiots did it. You freaking dumbass McAlberts were like, oh, you want us to sue you? Sure. Really smart, because all that discovery is going to be coming in now to Aidan and Karen about you guys that they didn't have before. So they're going to get all new stuff. During the same live show, Kearney also called McCabe's brother-in-law, Bob Galvin, after someone sent Kearney $10 to his Cash App with Mr. Galvin's number. Kearney left a voicemail for Mr. Galvin in which he claimed, among other things, your sister-in-law, Jen, she done killed that mother effer. Thrilled by the level of exposure and overall impact that Kearney's publications were having on Read's defamation campaign, Read messaged Kearney through Signal on September 29, 2023, stating, look at what you've done to their reputations and to my jury pool. Chris Albert's business is the next casualty, just a matter of time. Read was referring to the public degradation of the reputations of, among others, the plaintiffs, who ruined their own reputations by their words on the stand. Around this same time, Read and Kearney became administrators of the Facebook group Justice for Officer John O'Keefe and Karen Read Turtle Boy Official. As administrators, Kearney and Read maintained complete control over the Facebook group, including the ability to approve or deny posts, delete posts or comments, and approve or deny new members. The group became a feeding ground for defamatory and harassing posts made regarding the plaintiffs. Read personally posted in the group on several occasions, including instances where she shared confidential information regarding her criminal case that had not been previously made known to the public. Is that a crime? That you talk about your own case, facts in your own case? Is that a crime? No. This is so stupid. We're on page 19. Going on to 20. Okay. On March 12th, 2024, Kearney posted a 2-hour recap following one of the last court appearances before Read's first trial. In the video, Kearney stated, we called them murderers because they are. They are. They murdered John O'Keefe, and I will not shut up about that. You can call them witnesses all you effing want. They murdered John O'Keefe. This is a fact. It's undeniable. We don't know who delivered the fatal blow, but they all effing did it. I can't say that any of the things that he's stating are false. No one can, because we don't have the correct investigation that took place. The investigation was very faulty and probably probably included planting evidence instead of actually being a thorough investigation. So we'll never know who took the life of John O'Keefe unless we have someone actually admit it or tell us what happened in that house, most likely. Kearney attempted to justify his harassment and defamation of the plaintiffs by claiming that they deserved it. For example, Kearney admitted that he harassed McCabe at her daughter's lacrosse game and attempted to justify that conduct as follows. Well, guess what? Jennifer McCabe murdered a Boston police officer. She doesn't have a right to not be asked questions in public about that. You murdered someone. You don't get to just walk around like none of this happened. Again, all of these things go to, he's angry that McCabe and the Alberts and all of them are just walking around like, la da da da. We didn't do anything wrong. All of you people are crazy. And that's what they're still doing. They're still saying, we didn't do anything wrong. All of you people are crazy. Yeah. Before launching the defamation campaign with Read against the plaintiffs, Kearney's YouTube channel had only 25,000 subscribers. Before the first trial, Kearney's followers had ballooned to 70,000 YouTube subscribers. The profit model. They're going to talk about them profiting off of the case. Okay, let's hear it. Kearney's willingness to work with Read and his conduct is based on two motives, greed and fame. Kearney's business model relies on the ability to attract an audience by spreading outrage and mistrust, including most centrally through his defamatory statements about the plaintiffs. Actually, Kearney's business model is to expose lying criminals like yourselves. And if you call that defamation and he calls that exposing, well, then we're going to have to take it to the courts, like in this civil suit, and you guys are going to have to prove that you didn't kill John O'Keefe because Turtle Boy believes that you did. So he's always going to believe that. Unless something else comes out that tells us it wasn't them, that somebody else was in the house, but I doubt that. It is Kearney's willingness to work with Read and his conduct is based on two twin motives: greed and fame. Kearney's business model relies on the ability to attract an audience by spreading outrage and mistrust, including most centrally through his defamatory statements about the plaintiffs. It is a very lucrative business model. Kearney and Read have built an audience and personal celebrity by spreading these false narratives, or by speaking the truth about what is happening. That's maybe why they're popular and famous, because they had wrongs done against them by the government. Kearney holds himself out as a trusted reporter, regularly referring to himself as an award-winning journalist and a truth teller, when in fact he is nothing more than a willing purveyor of and vessel for defamatory material that Read fed him to publish for her own selfish purposes. Once Kearney captures his audience's attention with outrageous claims, he exploits their anger and mistrust by urging them to pay him money in exchange for products that echo the false worldview that he promotes. It's a worldview. He didn't create the world or make the whole world have this view. They even say it's a worldview. Yes, most of the people in the world believe the McAlberts did this and were involved. So good luck proving defamation. In his internet-based shows and content, Kearney hawks merchandise, exploiting the Canton cover-up, his dishonest characterization of events, a Boston cop possibly being involved in murdering another cop, followed by an elaborate cover-up designed to frame the murdered cop girlfriend. A design featuring a Massachusetts license plate with the word framed as the number, and a t-shirt featuring the text of a Google search that Kearney has repeatedly lied about, to name just a few. We all know that Google search happened. So get over it, Jen. Kearney consistently hustles his followers to donate directly to him on his homepage and his posts. His YouTube features a defense fund where followers continue to send him money in his pursuit of defending free speech. And during his live streams, he shares the names and messages of people who donate to him directly while watching his content. For example, during one live stream, he listed that Stephanie sends $10 and says, "Brian Higgins, car, front of mailbox. How does that work? Help. Thank you very much." Stephanie. Jim Ferris Bueller sends $5 and says, "Hey, Liberace, the shirt's going to irritate your nips." Why did they include that? Jason EMT sends $5, no comment. Thank you, Jason EMT. Carrie sends $5 and says, "What news station is covering the trial?" All of them. Brooke sends $2.50, says, "Free Karen Read," and "Can you say hi, Jennifer?" Hi, Jennifer. Greg sends $50 and says, "Class of 94, we love you, John. Great to see that. Thank you very much, Greg." Okay, and Laura sends $10 and says, "Please wear that shirt to court Tuesday." That must have been when he was wearing the frilly shirt. After personally recognizing his followers, Kearney goes on to direct his other followers to donate to him at the link on his website or directly through Cash App. So what? That is what people on YouTube do. That's not a crime. They go on to say Kearney's followers buy subscriptions, donate to him, purchase his merchandise, and continue to visit his website and YouTube page, all of which boost his attractiveness to advertisers. Okay. Kearney has estimated his monthly income to be 45 to 50,000, which he attributes to his defamatory discussions of the Read case. Do we have a quote? No. In coordination with Read and at her behest, I skipped something here. Sorry. Kearney publicly defends this corrupt business model by explaining, well, it's capitalism. If he creates a service that people think is worth giving their hard-earned money to, that's capitalism. That's their choice. It is. He claims that people want to give him money. People want to buy Turtle Club subscriptions. People want to buy stuff from the store. They do. And what are you, jealous? In coordination with Read and at her behest, Kearney spread elaborate and false narratives about the plaintiffs because doing so attracted attention, personal notoriety, and buying audience. And a buying audience. He deliberately stokes social anxiety and political discord in his listeners because distrust in government and cultural tribalism motivates those listeners to buy his products. What? He deliberately stokes social anxiety and political discord to his listeners because distrust in the government and cultural tribalism motivates those listeners to buy his products. What? They think that he's trying to make people have anxiety and about the things that are happening and to build like distrust of the government when anyone in Boston already distrusts the government. Massachusetts is quite a corrupt state. So is my state. We don't trust the government here. It's widely known. That doesn't mean that he's. Oh, wow. Okay. Even if he was trying to make everyone be paranoid of the government, so what? That's his right to do so. Goes on to say, Kearney also sought production and movie deals to further monetize his highly public defamation and harassment campaign against the plaintiffs. On July 1st, 2023, just 3 months after Kearney began working with Read to disseminate her false claims and harass witnesses, Kearney reported to Jackson that he had received an offer for a Karen Read documentary from B17 Entertainment, a California production company. The trial of Karen Read. Read's first trial began with jury selection on April 16, 2024. Kearney took to his live stream on April 17th and wondered if they can find jurors that aren't tainted already because Turtle Boy is everywhere. He proceeded to claim that they can't find a jury in the United States of America anywhere, any county, anywhere, because Turtle Boy's too big. I don't know if he said that, but it was difficult. They did take several days, I think, or a week or something to come up with enough jurors, 16 jurors. On April 20th, 2024, Kearney interviewed an excused juror who had previously engaged with his content and had been a member of his Facebook group. She explained that when she arrived for jury duty, she saw Free Karen Read signs all along the street and people wearing pink in support of Read, and that she could hear the protesters inside the courthouse. She also said that everyone in the room said that they had previously heard about the case. What? I don't remember that at all. What are they even referring to there? On April 20th, somebody who got excused, I guess? Was a juror who got excused? I don't know. During the same live stream, Kearney played a clip covering the courthouse from Court TV. He proceeded to verbally attack the host who expressed dissatisfaction with the conduct of Kearney and his followers, claiming it was disgraceful for them to harass the O'Keefe family, which never happened. And they continuously spread that lie. Somebody was booing, I think it was, what's his name? I can't remember. The guy that got kicked out of the first trial because he like, he assaulted Karen Read in the first trial. He was a cop buddy of John's, and I can't remember his name right now. Dougal, something Dougal. Jackie Dougal is his wife. Um, where was I? All right, so Kearney said, referring to McCabe, you know what's disgraceful? Julie Grant. I'll tell you what's really disgraceful is when somebody who Googled how long to die in cold at 2:27 a.m. because they wanted to make sure or they wanted to see and find out how long it would take for John O'Keefe to die in the snow. When a person like that shows up with the O'Keefe family and rubs their shoulders and starts a support group called Peggy's Angels, that's disgusting. Again, what's the crime here? This is like just a laundry list of complaints about Aidan Kearney and barely anything about Karen, to be honest. Like, there's hardly anything about Karen in here or anything to prove that Karen purposely fed incorrect information to Aidan Kearney about these people. And that you're never going to find that. So, what are we doing here? Kearney went on to say that McCabe is sick and sadistic and twisted, and that he has nothing but hatred to her, as I should, because I'm normal. I'm a rational person. Any rational person hates Jennifer McCabe and is disgusted by her because Jennifer McCabe is a pig. She's a pig. She's a cop-killing pig. He proceeded to mock the court TV host again, saying she supports a cop-killing pig like Jennifer McCabe, who Googled how long to die in cold. Facts. Julie Grant was one of the worst people out there reporting on it, who was completely biased against Karen and Turtle Boy, for that matter. On May 17th, 2024, following the first day of McCabe's trial testimony, Kearney posted to X that McCabe was a psychopath and that she knew exactly where O'Keefe was dying in the cold on Brian's front lawn. She plotted to put him there. On May 21st, 2024, I think there's enough evidence to maybe show that she did plot to cover up his murder. On May 21st, 2024, Kearney published part 354 of his Canton cover-up series, in which he summarized the testimony of the plaintiffs and claimed that the plaintiffs lied their way through their testimony. He claimed that they all have nearly identical, well-rehearsed stories. That was true, which isn't surprising because we've had 2 years to make sure that they have them straight and their lives depend on the consistency. He also explained that all of the plaintiffs were caught in the lies at some point during their testimony. At some point during all of their testimony, yes, lies were revealed by Karen's skilled defense attorneys. On June 7th, 2024, Kearney joined the Morning Club YouTube channel to discuss the Read trial. After being praised for literally creating all of the fanfare surrounding Read's trial, Kearney touted that people believe, in response to Kearney's coverage of the case, that the plaintiffs engaged in a legitimate cover-up and a framing of an innocent woman in order to protect some of the most unlikable people ever. Like, it's not like they're trying to cover up and protect likable, nice people. Like, they are protecting Jennifer McCabe, who nobody likes. She's like a Disney villain. She's so bad, and like, you're protecting her of all people. On June 22nd, 2024, Kearney hosted his weekend live show as Read's defense team began presenting their case. During the show, Kearney directed comments towards a member of the Albert family and said, your family murdered a cop, a human being, and then they covered it up. Then they blamed an innocent woman. This is not an opinion. It is fact. It is undeniable fact. The bigger injustice is that John O'Keefe was murdered by the McAlberts and left outside to die. In March 2025, HBO released a 5-part docuseries covering Karen Read's first trial in depth, which featured interviews with Read, Jackson, and Yannetti filmed during Read's first trial. Episode 2 features the relationship that developed between Read and Kearney before and during the trial. Yannetti admitted that they wanted media coverage of her case. So, initially, there was no coverage, but according to Yannetti, the Karen Read case really started to blow up when Turtle Boy started shining a light on Karen's innocence. Yannetti did not disclose that it was Read and her team who recruited Kearney to disseminate Read's false statements. I don't think she recruited him so much as I thought Natalie kind of got them together. She was the intermediary between them that we were talking about earlier. Read admitted that her lawyer said that she could provide information to Kearney so long as it was public, but advised her not to speak with him directly. Nevertheless, she said that she got nervous about who she was using as a third party, that was Natalie, so she ended up developing a direct relationship with Kearney herself. They started talking about the case probably once a day, 5 to 6 times a week. So they talked nearly every day about it. Read, however, failed to disclose to HBO that her counsel on her behalf were directly communicating with Kearney at the outset of the defamation scheme. You don't have to disclose to the prosecution that you're talking to somebody in the media. You don't have to disclose that. In the same HBO series, one of Kearney's followers admitted that Kearney had spurred them to take public action. Another admitted that Turtle Boy was the reason there were people outside the courthouse every single day. Yes, he's inspiring. He has inspired many people to also want to stick up for the truth and to stand up for our rights as citizens. But I guess we're just going to overlook his movement. We're going to call it defamation instead. That makes literally no sense. The documentary features footage of Kearney conceding that his purpose in canvassing the communities and creating a daily courthouse presence was to affect the jury pool. Kearney's followers were so incendiary that the judge created a 200-foot buffer, an unconstitutional 200-foot buffer zone around the courthouse and ordered that no one carry any signs or wear clothing with the intent to influence what was happening inside during the trial. Nevertheless, Kearney's followers, who were steeped in his lies about the plaintiff, showed up every day chanting "Free Karen Read" and wearing pink as a symbol of their support. The run-up to Read's retrial. On July 1st, 2024, a mistrial was declared in Read's first trial after 8 jurors decided that Read was guilty of manslaughter, but 4 jurors disagreed. Following the deadlock, the Commonwealth announced its intention to retry the case. Kearney and Read persisted in their defamation campaign against the plaintiffs. For example, on July 22, 2024, Kearney hosted a live show from outside the courtroom during a pretrial hearing. The video, which is set outside the courtroom, depicts Kearney confronting a police officer who is directing Kearney away from an individual whom the court has restrained Kearney from contacting. That was Lindsay Gattani. Kearney proceeded to harass other supporters. Wasn't it Lindsay? I think. Kearney proceeded to harass other supporters of the O'Keefe family outside the courthouse by saying they're not supporting, or they're just supporting cop killers. They're supporting the cop killing McAlberts. That's what they're doing here. These are the cop killing McAlberts. These are the people supporting the cop killers who murdered John O'Keefe in cold blood. They murdered him. They murdered John O'Keefe in cold blood. He asked the bystanders, "Are you proud to support cop killers like the McAlberts?" He continued, "I didn't kill someone like Jen McCabe, Brian Albert, and they all did. I didn't kill anyone, but they did. Yes, they did. Yes, they did. They murdered him. They murdered John O'Keefe in cold blood." I mean, I see no inaccurate facts. But I guess maybe when he says that this is not opinion, this is fact, he might have an issue, maybe like a slight issue. But in regards to this is what he believes. He believes this is fact. So still, you have to prove intent. You have to prove that they knowingly and willingly spread lies about these people. But this is what they believe. So how can you prove that it's defamation? On July 29th, Kearney published part 382 of his Canton cover-up series. In this post, Kearney explains, "I've been fighting for justice for John for the last 15 months. I sacrificed my freedom for that," because he went to jail. "But because the O'Keefe family can't get over their hatred for Karen Read and they have too much pride to admit that they've been conned by John's killers, they want me to rot in prison." Kearney also explained that the reason he faced witness intimidation charges was because I am standing up for justice for John and because I have questioned the people with who the evidence shows murdered John. I mean, again, facts. I don't know what they're trying to prove by putting these statements in. It only makes them look worse. On August 17th, 2024, Kearney hosted his weekend live show on YouTube. In his show, Kearney discussed a documentary about Scott Peterson's involvement in Lacey Peterson's murder in 2002. Now we're talking about Scott and Lacey Peterson? What does that prove? Kearney stated, "That's how I view the McAlberts. The same way those reporters view Scott Peterson, I view the McAlberts. I didn't view the McAlberts as witnesses. I view them as murderers because they are. Like, they're effing murderers. They put this in my charging document, so let me say it again in case I wasn't clear the first 100 times that I've said this. The McAlberts murdered John O'Keefe. They did. The McAlberts murdered John O'Keefe because it wasn't Karen Read." On September 14th, 2024, Kearney hosted his weekend live show. Kearney stated, "Think of how much that cost the Commonwealth, all to protect Jennifer McCabe, all to protect her, a murderer. Let me be very clear about this in case I haven't a million effing times. Jennifer McCabe is a murderer. Like, full stop. That's it. She's a murderer. She did it. She actively participated in the murder of John O'Keefe. I can't stress that enough. I'm begging them to sue me if it's not true." So was this the reason why they did it? Because he's begging them to sue him if it's not true. So they think, oh, well, if we sue, then they'll think that we're innocent, that we didn't do it if we make a lawsuit against them. I don't know. They haven't done it yet. She actively participated in the murder of John O'Keefe. On October 18th, 2024, Read publicly acknowledged for the first time her long-standing relationship with Kearney. In an interview given to Dateline NBC, Read admitted to speaking with Kearney on the phone almost every day for like 20 minutes. On January 20th, 2025, Kearney published part 466 of his Canton cover-up series in response to a claim by one of the McAlberts' friends that she was harassed by a turtle writer, the name for Kearney's followers, in public. Kearney stated, "The fact that Jennifer McCabe has to cover her face in public like this because everywhere she goes, people immediately see her face and recognize her as a cop killer is a great thing." She's a public figure who is disliked she because of her own actions. And we're supposed to believe that out of all the things that Jen McCabe did and we learned of in the trial, that we wouldn't feel that way about her unless Turtle Boy told us to feel this way. Like, basically their argument is Turtle Boy makes everybody hate us, so he should be punished. When they're not looking at their own actions and words and why people hate them. Because if they did, then they would know. It's their own actions. On April 24th, 2025, ABC released an episode of Impact Nightline in anticipation of Read's trial, which featured interviews with Read and Jackson. In it, Read's attorney Jackson stated, referring to the plaintiffs, "These are people in that house, or there are people in that house that are actually responsible for his death and who murdered him, and there are others in the house who were covering up that murder." Jackson, who specifically refers to McCabe as being involved in a... So then why aren't they suing Jackson for saying that? That's Jackson's words. What does that have to do with Aidan Kearney? I guess because he's representing Karen, so it has to do with Karen. Jackson also specifically refers to McCabe as being involved in a cover-up. Something was going on with John laying in that snow in that front yard. That means that this is a cover-up. John was murdered inside that house. His body was placed outside, and Jennifer McCabe knows that. The retrial and acquittal of Karen Read. On April 1st, 2025, the second trial of Karen Read began with jury selection. On April 23rd, 2025, O'Keefe's mother testified. Kearney reacted on a weekend live show by stating she's on the side of evil. And Are we trying to claim that this is like anything that they say, if it's hurtful to them, you can't say it? Because that's pretty much what this is. Who cares if he thinks that Peggy's on the side of evil? I do too. A lot of people do. She's not a nice woman. John and her weren't even talking in life when he died. They weren't even getting along. She wanted the kids and John wanted the kids. John didn't want them to have the kid. There was a whole thing. There was a whole thing that happened between them. She's not a nice woman. And if Turtle Boy says she's on the side of evil, who gives a shit? That's not illegal. Are we saying all these things because we think these hurtful words are illegal? Is that like what they're trying to prove? I don't get it. So he says she's evil. He argued that O'Keefe's mother is proudly friends with the people who quite obviously killed her son. Like, if that were my mother and I was killed, my mother would be looking for answers. And she wouldn't be like, yeah, I'm just going to be easily manipulated. I mean, Jennifer McCabe is a master manipulator. She's real good at fooling people, stupid people. And she's very lucky that the guy she helped kill, John O'Keefe, was surrounded by a lot of stupid people. Like, there's a lot of stupid people in John's life. Yeah. On April 25th, 2025, Kearney took to X in response to a post claiming that the Free Karen Read movement should be ashamed of the way that they treated O'Keefe's mother. Kearney replied, "Your friends murdered the woman's son. Every pain she's feeling right now is a direct result of the McAlberts and Brian Higgins murdering John O'Keefe. You proudly call these people friends. Nothing you say or think matters at all." Despite quite literally engaging in divisive language, Kearney later posted on X, "The idea that the Canton community is divided is a lie that the media spreads to make it sound like there are two equal competing sides to the Karen Read case. There is no divide. There is the vast majority who knows the McAlberts murdered John O'Keefe." So yes, we I agree with what he's saying here. The media constantly made it seem like there were tons of people on the prosecution side and made all the protesters and everybody out to be like the crazy ones. And that's what he was referring to, is that there isn't a divide. People in the community, people know Karen Read is innocent. It's the McAlberts, the people, the cops, the Alberts, the McCabes, all of those people and their connections in the community. Those are the only people that are like, oh no, those people are innocent. And all the fake burner accounts that they have on X too, because that's the only thing that you're seeing, really. I don't know why I didn't have that bigger. Sorry. Um, yeah, so you're seeing burner accounts and things when you're on X, and you're seeing support for the McAlberts and whatnot. Then that's usually not genuine. It's not real because it's fake accounts. And that's what he was saying in that that there isn't a divide. Most people already know Karen's guilty. I mean, Karen's Karen's innocent, and the McAlberts are guilty. Read herself also published more defamatory statements regarding the plaintiffs during her retrial. On May 1st, 2025, following McCabe's testimony, Read spoke to reporters outside the courthouse about McCabe, claiming another witness, another instance of perjury, or instances, I'd say. Referring to McCabe, Read then said, "She is lying." Nowhere in here does it say that she's not lying. Like, nowhere in here can you prove that McCabe wasn't lying. She lied to the FBI. She lied to the FBI when they came to her house. What makes you think that she's going to tell the truth on the stand? Then on May 8th, 2025, Kearney went live outside of the courthouse wearing a t-shirt with a still of McCabe on the stand. He explained that he was walking the periphery of the buffer zone and hoped to not be in violation with the shirt. He went around speaking to protesters outside the courthouse, with people coming from as far as California and Georgia. People stopped to take pictures with him, and people handed him money, to which he responded, "People just give me cash. It's nice." Why does that why is that even in here? Why does that bother the McAlberts so much? They cannot stand that he makes money off of this when he's just trying to advocate for the truth. Reed knew that her statements regarding McCabe and others, like the same type of statements that she fed to Kearney, were untrue and were intended to deflect from her own culpability. How do we know that she knew that? How do we know she's spreading lies? You still haven't proven that 31 pages in. During the retrial, the prosecution presented footage of an interview with Reed and Yannetti. During the interview, Reed acknowledged that she previously expressed concern to Yannetti that she was responsible for John O'Keefe's death. And then when I hired David and Yannetti, I asked him those questions the night of January 29th. Like, David, what if I ran over his foot, or what if I clipped him in the knee and he passed out and I went to care for him and he threw up or passed out? And David said, then yeah, you have some element of culpability. That was so dumb that she even said that. Like, that never should have been in any. Well, I'm sure when she filmed it, she thought she was going to have an answer, not have to wait another year and go to another trial. So she probably wasn't thinking that that could come back and bite her in the ass. Moreover, during the Commonwealth's closing argument, the Commonwealth showed a clip from an interview with Reed in the HBO documentary with a smirk on her face. Reed explains, the closest I must have said was, did I hit him? I don't know, or I know I said I hit him, but did I really say it as many times as law enforcement is claiming I said it? We never heard it in the body cam footage, so don't know what's going on there. In response to the testimony of Brian Lucky Lawfren, a plow driver who testified, did I skip a whole sentence? I don't know. On June 4th, 2025, Kearney posted a video recapping day 27 of the retrial. I skipped a whole sentence. In response to the testimony of Brian Lucky Lawfren, a plow driver who testified on the defense's behalf, Kearney said, I run Canton. I'm the mayor of Canton. I'm the most powerful person in Canton. Lucky, you don't have to worry about them anymore. The big wolf is dead. I slayed them. The McAlberts, the McCabes are nothing. Referencing the McCabes and the Alberts, he continued, they're pissing their pants every single day, counting down the days of their freedom. Like Jennifer McCabe is every day. She's a free woman. She's grateful for her freedom because she knows that she's going to spend a significant amount of time in federal prison, and it's going to be glorious when that happens. It still could happen. Still could happen, especially after this lawsuit now and discovery and depositions. We might find out more about Jen's culpability. On June 18th, 2025, immediately following the conclusion of the retrial, Kearney was interviewed by NBC 10 in Boston. During that interview, he said, the people who murdered John O'Keefe are out there. They're the McCabes and the Alberts, and John O'Keefe went into their home and never came out of it alive. And they threw him on the lawn like trash. When asked if he felt responsible for the verdict, Kearney explained that he was responsible for the social media aspect of it. He also explained that he'd like to think that some of the evidence that was presented to the jury in court was a result of his journalism and his influence and his activism online. He also applauded himself for conducting standouts, putting up billboard. He never put up the billboard. That wasn't him. All over Norfolk County for Free Karen Read, and making it impossible for people not to know about the case. Kearney was also asked who killed John O'Keefe, to which he responded, these people inside Brian Albert's house. Dude, I don't know who exactly delivered the fatal blow, but Brian Albert was there, Colin Albert was there, Brian Higgins was there, and the dog was in there. And quite frankly, every single person inside the house who has remained silent is just as guilty as the people who delivered the fatal blow to John. They did it. And that's been my sentiment too. And a lot of people's sentiment is that it doesn't matter who it was. The fact that all of them have remained silent, have lied on the stand, have shown that they cannot be credible witnesses. That's a problem. All of them. So I think all of them should have some kind of conspiracy to cover up a murder. Even if they didn't murder him themselves, every single person in that house that testified that night and some law enforcement too should all get some kind of conspiracy to cover up a murder. On June 19th, 2025, Kearney posted a live YouTube video discussing the Read trial. Within the first 10 seconds of Kearney being on camera, he remarked that there were already over 10,000 people streaming the video or watching the video. He hustled the listeners to subscribe to his page, so what? And within the first 5 minutes, he had surpassed 143,000 subscribers to his YouTube channel. 35 minutes into the program, Kearney explained that over 20,000 people were watching the live stream and that it was the biggest show he'd ever had. He explained that if he had a message that they wanted him to read aloud to everyone, they could donate to him using the link attached to the chat, and they could pay whatever amount of money they want, and they could write a message. For example, an individual by the name of Oksana sent him $150 to say, "You did it, Aidan. You did it. You stared down an entire system built on lies and corruption and intimidation, and you never blinked. Karen Read walks free." An individual named Allison sent him $10 to say, "I can't imagine the pride and emotion you felt seeing all your hard work come to fruition." So, because they're happy that Karen gets acquitted of a crime she obviously didn't do, they're mad about it. That we're celebrating that an innocent woman didn't go to jail. We're celebrating that, and they can't handle it. It's too much for them. Hurts their little feelings, their little fifis. During the same program, Kearney admitted that when the jurors came in after deliberating but before announcing the verdict, two of the jurors looked to him and smiled at him. Kearney also admitted that he was invited to the celebration dinner with Read and her defense team after the verdict. At the dinner, Kearney and Read posed for the picture below, mocking Colin Albert. Kearney then posted the photograph on X. He acknowledged that he and Read had spoken about recreating the picture with the same caption over a 2-year period. So this is obviously Kearney and Read's pose. This was Colin Albert and somebody. I don't know who that is, but they're making fun of the fist because all the Alberts do the fist up in their poses when they post for pictures. So that's all that was. And so what? Is that mocking them a little? Maybe. Who cares? He's allowed to do that. On November 2nd, 2025, Kearney hosted his weekend live show in which he reacted to a podcast that he had previously appeared on speaking about the Read case. In the podcast, Kearney admitted that he protected Karen and that he lied to Boston Magazine about their relationship. He explained that Read's team did not want to be publicly associated with him. They wanted him to do the work of getting the story out there about what the McAlberts have done. He admitted that he understood it would be dangerous if her team were publicly tied to him, but that privately they praised him and they fully supported him. In the same video, Kearney also admitted that he approached McCabe in the past to ask her questions at the direct request of Read, Jackson, and Yannetti. He did? I don't remember that. I'd have to see the clip. This might be something that's taken out of context. And even if, well, I don't think you can talk to the witnesses, but he's a journalist, so he's doing it out of his journalistic integrity, asking questions. So even if they did tell him to ask certain questions, he is the one that asks them in the way that he does, and he's the one that goes up and, gets them riled up. So that has nothing to do with Karen and the way and what she wants being asked. I think when he goes out there, he just does what he does, and what he asks is what he wants to know. On January 12th, 2026, Read participated in her first podcast interview since her criminal trial ended with Rotten Mango. When asked What do you think happened to John O'Keefe? Reed responded that he entered the house at 34 Fairview and much sooner than later met his demise. She bluntly concluded that someone in that house killed John O'Keefe, referring to the plaintiffs. The impact of Kearney and Reed's conspiracy. Every day since April 18th, 2023, when the defamation campaign began, the plaintiffs and their families have been harassed and tormented as a result of Kearney's and Reed's unlawful conspiracy to defame them. The plaintiffs have been prisoners in their own communities, besieged by Kearney and others who have been duped by Kearney and Reed to believe that the plaintiffs are murderers. We're all stupid. We all are just so stupid and have no minds of our own that we just believe anything that Aidan tells us. That must be it. We don't have minds of our own. We can't think and logically conclude on our own that someone in that house murdered John if it wasn't Karen. But we're all dumb. We just don't have any brains. We just believe Turtle Boy blindly. Defendants have deliberately employed these false narratives about the O'Keefe's murder, and the plaintiffs' families are part of the marketing scheme that has brought Kearney substantial personal income. Kearney has an audience of hundreds of thousands of followers. He has purposely published statements by other people who falsely assert that the plaintiffs are responsible. What other people? Now you're saying he's purposely publishing false statements that other people say. Okay. Prove that. And I don't know. Even if he posts something that someone else says, that doesn't necessarily mean that he co-signs to what that person is meaning. So if there was like a post or something that somebody, maybe he shared a post and wrote a comment about, trying to debunk it or whatever. But sharing published statements by other people who falsely assert the plaintiffs are responsible. So what? It's just proving that other people think it too, not just him. As a result of defendants' campaign, the plaintiffs have been forced to endure malicious and cruel abuse at the hands of ruthless and unscrupulous people. On a regular basis, the plaintiffs have faced physical confrontation and harassment at their personal residences, their places of business, and their children's extracurricular activities. The plaintiffs have also sustained a barrage of harassment and verbal assaults on social media. Throughout Reed's trials, Kearney and his followers harassed the plaintiffs as they reported to court to serve as witnesses. No, they didn't. The harassment was so extreme that the judge ordered a buffer zone around the courthouse to protect those inside. That's not true. She just blindly, because the prosecution asked for a buffer zone, she just blindly gave it to them. It was unconstitutional, never should have happened. And this whole thing is a bunch of garbage. The harassment was so extreme that the judge ordered a buffer zone. No one was harassing witnesses. Kearney and his followers chanted "cop killers" as the plaintiffs walked by and shouted "Free Karen Read" all day. The plaintiffs have had to undertake efforts to protect themselves and their identities. Their families' places of business have been targeted, and Kearney has stalked them at their children's extracurricular activities, causing fear and emotional trauma. He came to one game. That's not stalking your children's extracurricular activities. God, you people have victim mentality so bad. He came to one game. He stood outside Chris's business one time. That's not like a pattern of harassment. And Kearney has stalked them. Okay, whatever. Causing fear and emotional trauma. Kearney admitted publicly that one of the goals of his false, outrageous, and defamatory statements about the plaintiffs was not only to portray the plaintiffs as those responsible for O'Keefe's murder, but also to taint the jury pool for Reed's trial and to benefit financially from the publicity. Causes of action: count 1, defamation and defamation per se. The paragraphs above are incorporated and re-alleged as it is fully set forth herein. In repeatedly publishing false statements asserting or reasonably understood to be asserting that the plaintiffs were responsible for the murder of O'Keefe and the cover up of their purported role in that murder, Read published numerous defamatory statements both directly and through her accomplice, Kearney. Read's statements were false. The plaintiff did not murder John O'Keefe, did not participate in any conspiracy to murder O'Keefe, did not engage in any cover up of O'Keefe's death, and did not frame Read for murder. Read knew her statements were false because she was present when O'Keefe was struck by her vehicle, made multiple admissions to first responders that she hit O'Keefe, and acknowledged that her own attorney may have had some element of culpability in O'Keefe's death. Publications were not only individually defamatory, but also part of a continuous course of conduct, starting in 2023, continuing through today, stating, asserting, and implying, and suggesting that the plaintiffs were responsible for the murder of O'Keefe and engaged in a cover up, in part framing Read for O'Keefe's murder. She's allowed to defend herself. If she didn't do it, somebody else did. And if you look at the events that took place that night, the only other witnesses or the only other suspects would have been people in that house. So for her to say, hey, it's not me, but it was somebody in that house, because that's the only conclusion that could be made, that's not defamation. Statements contained in Read's campaign of harassment and abuse constitute defamation per se. The harmful nature of the defamatory statements is self-evident. The defamatory statements implicate the plaintiffs in heinous criminal conduct. False implications of criminal conduct constitute classic defamation per se. Read's statements were of and concerning each of the plaintiffs. She repeatedly identified plaintiffs by name, and her audience understood the defamatory statements to refer specifically to the plaintiffs. The defamatory statements were published to third parties, including Kearney's hundreds of thousands of followers across multiple social media platforms, blog readers, podcast listeners, and television viewers. Okay. Read's defamatory statements have injured the plaintiffs' reputations, and images have exposed the plaintiffs to public and private hatred, contempt, and ridicule. No. I'll change this to just a little bit to make it honest. The plaintiff's testimony, televised for all to see, was what has injured the plaintiffs' reputations and images, and have exposed the plaintiffs to public and private hatred, contempt, and ridicule. There, I fixed your sentence. These false publications have caused the plaintiffs to sustain and substantial damages. I don't know. That's the words on the page. I don't know what they meant there. Read published her outrageous, cruel, and malicious lies about the plaintiffs negligently, with knowledge that the statements were false, or with reckless regard as to whether or not they were true. These acts of defendant Read resulted in damage to the plaintiffs. Paragraphs 1 through 116 above are incorporated. This is defamation, count 2, defamation and defamation per se for Aidan Kearney. So all the paragraphs above are true. In repeatedly publishing false statements asserting or reasonably understood to be asserting that the plaintiffs were responsible for the murder of O'Keefe and a cover-up of their purported role in that murder, Kearney published numerous defamatory statements. Kearney's statements were false. The plaintiffs did not murder John O'Keefe and did not participate in any conspiracy to murder O'Keefe, did not engage in any cover-up of O'Keefe's death, and did not frame Read for murder. Kearney knew or had reason to know his statements were false because A, he received his information exclusively from Read and her legal team, who were motivated to deflect blame from Read. He made no independent journalistic efforts to verify the accuracy of the murder accusations before publishing them. Bullshit. He had documents, court documents that he could read through. He admitted, he reportedly ignored or dismissed evidence contradicting his narrative. He admitted that he protected Karen Read and lied about their relationship to conceal the source of his information. It's not illegal to conceal your source when you're a journalist. These publications were not only individually defamatory, but also part of a continuous course of conduct starting in 2023 and continuing through today, stating, asserting, and implying and suggesting that the plaintiffs were responsible for the murder of O'Keefe and engaged in a cover up by, in part, framing Read for O'Keefe's murder. The statements contained in Kearney's campaign of harassment and abuse constitute defamation per se. The hateful nature of the defamatory statements is self-evident. The defamatory statements implicate the plaintiffs in heinous criminal conduct. False implications of criminal conduct constitute classic defamation per se. Kearney's statements were of and concerning each of the plaintiffs. He repeatedly identified plaintiffs by name, and his audiences understood the defamatory statements to refer specifically to the plaintiffs. The defamatory statements were published to third parties, including Kearney's hundreds of thousands of followers across multiple social media platforms, blog readers, podcast listeners, and television viewers. Kearney made these defamatory statements in an effort to increase his viewership and to promote financially. Or to profit financially. Kearney's defamatory publications readily identified the plaintiffs to hundreds of thousands of people. Kearney's defamatory publications were broadcast to hundreds of thousands of people. His defamatory publications have injured the plaintiffs' reputations and images and have exposed the plaintiffs to public and private hatred, contempt, and ridicule. These false publications have caused the plaintiffs to sustain actual and substantial damages. Prove that the hatred, the contempt, and ridicule is from Kearney and not from their own actions. Because that's what you're going to have to do. In light of his prior experience with similar sorts of negligent, reckless, and false statements, Kearney knew that his publications would cause the plaintiffs to suffer harassment and potential violence. Okay. Now they're saying that he knew that his statements against them would cause violence and other harassment. Okay, sure. Kearney broadcasted, and even if it did, it's not his fault. Even if harassment and potential violence did befall them, it's not his fault. He doesn't control other people. He doesn't control the whole internet, despite what the McAlberts think. Kearney broadcast his outrageous, cruel, and malicious lies about the plaintiffs negligently with knowledge that the statements were false or reckless, or with reckless regard as to whether or not they were true. These acts of defendant Kearney resulted in damage to the plaintiffs. How the damage? Show us these things. Count 3, aiding and abetting defamation and defamation per se as to defendant Read. Paragraphs 1 through 16, as well as 126 through 38, are incorporated and realleged. Defendant Read knowingly, recklessly, negligently, and maliciously aided and abetted the foreseeable, wrongful, and tortious conduct of defendant Kearney against the plaintiffs described above, therefore substantially assisting and encouraging such conduct. Among other things, Read continuously and intentionally provided defendant Kearney with non-public and or confidential information about her criminal case and the plaintiffs, whether directly or through an intermediary, to direct, assist, and encourage defendant Kearney's tortious conduct. As a direct and proximate result of defendant Read's wrongful conduct, the plaintiffs have been injured and damaged as described above, and are entitled to recover compensatory and punitive damages. Compensation. I was going to say something. No, I don't remember. Next count. 4, aiding and abetting as to defendant Kearney. Paragraphs 1 through 25 are incorporated and realleged, fully set forth herein. Defendant Kearney knowingly, recklessly, negligently, and with legal malice aided and abetted the foreseeable wrongful and tortious conduct of defendant Read against the plaintiffs described above, thereby substantially assisting and encouraging such conduct. Among other things, Kearney continuously and intentionally communicated with Read and her legal team to secretly gather non-public and or confidential information about Read's criminal case and the plaintiffs to direct, assist, and encourage defendant Read's tortious conduct. As a direct and proximate result of defendant Kearney's wrongful conduct, the plaintiff has been injured and damaged as described above. How? How have you been damaged? Other than people don't like you now because they think you're a murderer. Because you are. In some way, shape, or form, you had something to do with his murder. So we're just we're we're being really technical here, really picky on words. Count 5, intentional infliction of emotional distress. All the paragraphs above are re-alleged in engaging in her campaign of outrageous and false statements about the plaintiffs. Read intended to inflict emotional distress or knew or should have known the emotional distress was likely a result of her conduct. Read's conduct was extreme and outrageous. How dare she defend herself? Read's conduct was extreme and outrageous because she orchestrated a coordinated campaign to falsely accuse the plaintiffs of murder and conspiracy to frame her, knowing these accusations were false. Read deliberately used an intermediary and encrypted communications to funnel false statements to Kearney for maximum public dissemination, hired a private investigator previously associated with Harvey Weinstein to confront plaintiffs, and celebrated the destruction of plaintiffs' reputations while monetizing the resulting publicity. Read's conduct exceeded all bounds of decency because she knowingly destroyed the reputations and lives of innocent people to deflect attention away from her own culpability. Well, isn't that rich? They're saying she knowingly destroyed other people's lives, other innocent people's lives, to deflect what was coming her way, the punishment coming to her. But these innocent lives that are so innocent are doing that exact same thing. Hypocrisy much? They're claiming that they're innocent and trying to throw her under the bus. They're the ones doing it. Read's conduct was the cause of the plaintiff's distress. The emotional distress sustained by the plaintiffs was severe, but yet you still haven't told us what it is. As a direct and proximate result of Read's conduct, the plaintiffs suffered severe emotional distress, including but not limited to anxiety, fear for their personal safety and the safety of their families, damage to personal and professional relationships, and the inability to participate in normal daily activities without fear of harassment or confrontation. Maybe you shouldn't have helped murder someone and then frame an innocent woman. The defendant's conduct was so outrageous in character and so extreme in degree as to go beyond all possible bounds of decency and to be regarded as atrocious and utterly intolerable in a civilized community. How dare she defend herself and blame us innocent people who had clearly nothing to do with it, although everything we say out of our mouths sounds suspicious. But we didn't do it. How dare she blame us? So crazy. Count 6, intentional infliction of emotional distress by Kearney. All the above paragraphs incorporated again. In broadcasting his campaign of outrageous and false statements about the plaintiffs, Kearney intended to inflict emotional distress, or knew or should have known that emotional distress was the likely result of his conduct. Kearney's conduct was extreme and outrageous. Kearney's conduct was extreme and outrageous because he published over 545 blog posts and countless videos falsely accusing plaintiffs of murder. Let me back up here and say the reason there's so many is that there was just so much information coming out and so many lies by the other side coming out that he had to expose. So that's why. There were so many. They're saying he stalked and confronted plaintiffs at their homes, workplaces, and children's extracurricular activities. No, he didn't stalk you. Did he confront you? Yes. Stalk you? No. And not illegal to confront someone with questions. Publicly released plaintiffs' personal identifying information, including social security numbers, home addresses, and phone numbers, organized mobs to gather outside the plaintiffs' homes. Oh, you mean like a peaceful protest? Also not illegal. Called plaintiffs derogatory names, including cop killer, pig, and horseface. Ooh, that really bothers her, doesn't it? Because that's in here twice. She is a horseface. Left harassing voicemails for plaintiffs and their family members and encouraged his followers to harass and confront the plaintiffs. Kearney's sustained multi-year harassment campaign designed to torment the plaintiffs and profit from their misery constitutes conduct that exceeds all bounds of decency. Kearney's conduct was the cause of the plaintiffs' distress. The emotional distress sustained by the plaintiffs was severe. As a direct and approximate result of Kearney's conduct, the plaintiffs suffered severe emotional distress, including but not limited to anxiety, fear for their safety, the safety of their families, depression, humiliation, damage to personal and professional relationships, and the inability to participate in normal daily activities without fear of harassment or confrontation. Again, don't murder someone and then cover it up, and then you won't have to feel like you can't participate in normal daily activities without being confronted. That would be my advice to them, although it's too late. Kearney's conduct was so outrageous in character and so extreme in degree as to go beyond all bounds of decency and to be regarded as atrocious and utterly intolerable in a civilized society or community. In light of his prior experience with similar types of negligent, false, and reckless statements, Defendant Kearney knew that his publications would cause the plaintiffs to suffer harassment and potential violence. The plaintiffs have suffered actual and substantial damages as a direct and proximate result of Kearney's conduct. Count 7, aiding and abetting intentional infliction of emotional distress as to the defendant. Defendant Read knowingly, recklessly, negligently, and with legal malice aided and abetted the foreseeable, wrongful, and tortious conduct of Defendant Kearney against the plaintiff described above, thereby substantially assisting and encouraging such conduct. Among other things alleged herein, Read continuously and intentionally provided Defendant Kearney with non-public and or confidential information about her criminal case and the plaintiffs, whether directly or through an intermediary, in an effort to assist and encourage Defendant Kearney's tortious conduct. Well, I just paused and I don't remember where I left off, so if I read this already, apologies. Among other things alleged herein, Read continuously and intentionally provided Defendant Kearney with non-public and or confidential information about her criminal case and the plaintiffs, whether directly or through an intermediary, in an effort to assist and encourage Defendant Kearney's tortious conduct. As a result and proximate result of defendant's wrongful conduct, the plaintiffs have been injured and damaged as described above and are entitled to recover compensatory and punitive damages from Defendant Read. Count 8, aiding and abetting intentional infliction of emotional distress as to Defendant Kearney. Paragraphs 1, all of the paragraphs above still, I don't know why they do that. They reallege it. And then they say, Defendant Kearney knowingly, recklessly, negligently, and with legal malice aided and abetted the foreseeable wrongful and tortious conduct of Defendant Read against the plaintiffs described above, therefore substantially assisting and encouraging such conduct. Among other things alleged herein, Kearney continuously and intentionally communicated with Read and her legal team through encrypted means to secretly gather non-public and or confidential information about Read's case and the plaintiffs in an effort to assist and encourage Defendant Read's tortious conduct. This is such garbage. As a direct and proximate result of defendant's Kearney's wrongful conduct, the plaintiffs have been injured and damaged as described above and are entitled to recover compensatory and punitive damages from defendant Kearney. Count 9. Negligent infliction of emotional distress. As to Read. Read's campaign of outrageous, cruel, and malicious lies created an unreasonable risk of causing the plaintiffs severe emotional distress. Okay. Good luck. They keep using the campaign of defamation, the campaign of this malicious lies. Prove that she campaigned to lie about the McAlberts. That's ridiculous. The plaintiff's distress was foreseeable. The plaintiff's emotional distress was severe enough that it resulted in illness or bodily harm, including but not limited to anxiety, depression, sleep disturbances, and other physical manifestations of severe psychological trauma. Maybe you're feeling that because you're guilty and you're afraid you might be caught someday. Perhaps it's not unheard of that people get arrested for murder many, many, many years after they find out things, I mean, stuff comes to light later. So Reed's outrageous, cruel, and malicious conduct was the cause of the plaintiff's distress. The plaintiffs have suffered actual and substantial damages as a direct and proximate result of the defendant's conduct. They'd have to prove that. They have to prove what damages that they've actually suffered. Count 10, negligent infliction of emotional distress from Kearney. Kearney's campaign of outrageous, cruel, and malicious lies created an unreasonable risk of causing the plaintiff severe emotional stress. The plaintiff's distress was foreseeable. The plaintiff's distress was severe enough that it resulted in illness or bodily harm. Bodily harm? Including but not limited to anxiety, depression, sleep disturbances, and other physical manifestations. Kearney's outrageous, cruel, and malicious conduct was the cause of the plaintiff's distress. The plaintiffs have suffered actual and substantial damages as a direct and proximate result of the defendant's conduct. Count 11. We are 5 pages away from the end, so we don't have much left. So count 11 is aiding and abetting negligent infliction of emotional distress. Defendant Read knowingly, recklessly, negligently, and with legal malice aided and abetted the foreseeable, wrongful, and tortious conduct of defendant Kearney against the plaintiffs described above, thereby substantially assisting and encouraging such conduct. Among other things alleged herein, Read continuously and intentionally provided defendant Kearney with non-public and/or confidential information about her criminal case and the plaintiffs, whether directly or through an intermediary, in an effort to assist and encourage defendant Kearney's tortious conduct. As a direct and proximate result of defendant Kearney's wrongful conduct, the plaintiffs have been injured and damaged as described above, and are entitled to recover compensatory and punitive damages from the defendant. Account 12 is the same thing, aiding and abetting negligent infliction of emotional distress, but to Kearney. Defendant Kearney knowingly, recklessly, negligently, and with legal malice aided and abetted the foreseeable, wrongful, and tortious conduct of defendant Read against the plaintiffs described above, thereby substantially assisting and encouraging such conduct. Among other things alleged herein, Kearney continuously and intentionally communicated with Read and her legal team through encrypted means to secretly gather non-public and/or confidential information about Read's criminal case and the plaintiffs in an effort to assist and encourage Read's tortious conduct. As a direct and proximate result of defendant Kearney's wrongful conduct, the plaintiffs have been injured and damaged as described above and are entitled to recover compensatory and punitive damages. Count 13, civil conspiracy. The defendants, acting in concert with one another, conspired by concerted action to pursue a campaign of defamation, harassment, abuse, and intimidation, resulting in severe emotional distress on the plaintiffs, which included numerous unlawful acts or lawful acts by unlawful means as described above. The defendants formed an agreement, whether expressed or implied, to defame the plaintiffs and, through their intentional, reckless, and negligent conduct, to inflict several emotional or severe emotional distress on them. This agreement, evidenced by Read's use of intermediaries and encrypted communications to funnel information and false statements to Kearney. What? The defendants formed an agreement, whether expressed or implied, to defame the plaintiffs. Okay. This agreement that they have, apparently, to defame the defendants is the proof of that is these things here. Read's use of intermediaries and encrypted communication to funnel information and false secret or statements to Kearney. Kearney's admission that he received information and direction from Read and her legal team. Read's praise and encouragement of Kearney's defamatory publications. Their communicated timing of publications to coincide with court proceedings. Their shared financial and strategic interests in the defamation campaign. And Read's and Kearney's joint efforts to conceal their relationship from the public. It's not a crime to conceal the fact that your source is the defendant in the case. It's not a crime to conceal that. In furtherance of their scheme to defame, harass, abuse, and intimidate the plaintiffs and defendants, committed overt acts and were otherwise willful participants in joint activity. The defendants' misconduct was undertaken with malice, willfulness, recklessness, and negligent indifference to the rights of others. The acts of the defendants resulted in damage to the plaintiffs. Count 14. Massachusetts Unfair Trade Practices Act to Kearney. In the course of trade or commerce, unethically, oppressively, immorally, and unscrupulously developed, propagated, and disseminated outrageous and malicious lies about the plaintiffs and their family members, and he did so for profit. Kearney operates a commercial enterprise through which he monetizes content by selling subscriptions for merchandise featuring the plaintiffs' names and likenesses, and advertising, and by soliciting donations. Kearney's defamatory statements about the plaintiffs were integral to his commercial business model and were designed to attract paying customers and generate revenue. The campaign of lies, abuse, and harassment was a deceptive and unfair practice and offended public policy. Kearney's conduct constitutes unfair methods of competition and unfair or deceptive acts or practices in the conduct of trade or commerce within the meaning of whatever statute. That is really reaching. Unfair trade practices, because you're just saying that what he's putting out there is lies, but you're the people that he's talking about, and you have a lot to lose if the things that he says are lies. I mean, true. So you have a lot to lose if what he's saying is true. So of course you're going to say he's lying. Ridiculous. So his business, he's sharing false statements, and that goes to his business. So like, that's another claim, unfair trade practices. I don't know. I really think that's reaching. Kearney's reprehensible conduct caused substantial injury to the plaintiffs that is not outweighed by any countervailing benefits to consumers or competition, and that the plaintiffs themselves could not have reasonably avoided. Kearney's monetization of defamatory content about private individuals constitutes an unfair business practice. Plaintiffs are consumers, and Kearney's actions caused them to suffer significant damages to, among other things, money or property. So they're consumers of his product, his work. So therefore, it's unfair methods. They what? What kind of an argument is that? Because they're consumers of Kearney's work, so that's how you get that he's doing unfair trade practices, because it's his business and he's saying things about them that are, according to them, incorrect. I don't get it. Kearney's reprehensible conduct caused substantial injury to the plaintiffs that is not outweighed. I said that already. Okay, so plaintiffs are consumers. Ridiculous. Kearney's conduct was a foreseeable cause of and a substantial factor causing the plaintiff's injury. Kearney's broadcast was outrageous, cruel, and malicious lies about the plaintiffs negligently or with knowledge that the statements were false or with reckless disregard as to whether or not they were true. Kearney's conduct was willful and knowing and entitling the plaintiffs to an award of double or treble damages pursuant to whatever statute this is. Kearney deliberately built a commercial enterprise around defaming the plaintiffs, knowing his statements were false or acting with reckless disregard for the truth or falsity. Good luck, because he's always ever said that he fully 100% believes this. He believes what he says. So it's not defamation. These acts of the defendant resulted in damage to the plaintiffs. Plaintiffs, through their counsel, served a demand letter on Kearney at least 30 days prior to the filing of this complaint pursuant to MGL 93A, detailing the underlying facts of the cause of action with reasonable specificity. Request for relief. Wherefore, for the reasons set forth above, the plaintiffs respectfully request that the court grant the following relief. Enter judgment in favor of the plaintiffs on all counts, award damages in an amount to be determined at trial, but not exceed at least this court's jurisdictional limit, including double or treble damages pursuant to Chapter 93A. Award punitive damages in an amount to be determined at trial. Award the plaintiffs reasonable attorney fees, costs, expenses of this litigation, and prejudgment interest. They're asking for attorney's fees? They're suing. Award any such other legal, equitable, and declaratory relief as the court deems just and proper. Jury demand. Plaintiffs demand a trial by jury on all issues so triable. I would love that. Let's do that. Let's have a jury trial, and we can relitigate the death of John O'Keefe all over again. And this time we're going to have your text messages. Jen McCabe, Brian Albert, Colin Albert, Higgins, at least what can be recovered, what wasn't damaged by Albert and Higgins by getting rid of their phones, their SIM cards and things like that. So whatever discovery we do get, it's going to be explosive, I'm sure, because there's still more that needs to be coming to light in this case. There's still more that needs there's so many things we still have questions about. And taking this to trial would allow for the filming of it. We would all get to see it. That would be wonderful. I don't think it's ever going to make it that far because I think this is going to get thrown out due to the anti-SLAPP laws in Massachusetts. You can't just sue someone basically out of retaliation. And in that case, the McAlberts, will be paying Karen Read and Turtle Boy's attorney fees if this is thrown out in the anti-SLAPP for whatever the anti-SLAPP rule. So there you have it. That is the full 50-page filing from the House defendants, Jennifer McCabe, Brian Albert, Colin Albert, and Brian Higgins. And then they list all the attorneys here. So James L. Tuxbury, William S. Fish Jr., Kieran T. Murphy, Hinckley Allen, and that's the name of the place. But those are their attorneys. And then this Christopher M. Mattei, I don't know how you say it. He's the one that represented the families in the Sandy Hook trial with Alex Jones. So he got that huge award for the parents of the children of Sandy Hook, if it was even real, because I don't even believe it was real, but that's my opinion, and I can say that. I believe that Alex Jones was onto something there. Anyways, I am done with that. So I'm sure we're going to have some kind of response from both Karen and Turtle Boy in court filing, via court filing. So when those come out, we will be sure to read those as well, because I think this whole civil suit just got really interesting to me. I said in the last episode, the last update of Karen Read, that I'm not going to do updates unless it has to do with the Read case or the investigation into John's death, those kinds of things. This I think does. This particular lawsuit does, because it is basically opening them up to relitigate it all, because the truth is a defense. And when you have the facts on your side, it's not going to go very well for the McAlberts. That's all I got to say. I could see it going. I could see maybe not doing the anti-slap and letting it go to trial, only just to expose them more. Not that they would do that like intentionally to expose them more, but I would like to see that. Otherwise, there might be ways to uh, figure it out without televising it all for everyone to see. So yeah, that's the McAlberts' delusional take on how the world now sees them, and it's all because of Karen and Turtle Boy. It pretty much comes down to they hate Turtle Boy and Karen. They hate Karen for not just taking it, shutting up, and saying, "Yeah, I'll take my manslaughter sentence." They hate her for that. They hate her for questioning, because questioning it and declaring your innocence is what puts everyone what puts eyes on the McAlberts. It's what makes us look at them, because who else? If it wasn't Karen, who else? And there were a lot of people that night. There's only a few that I think actually were involved, but all the rest are involved in covering it up. So every single one of them involved in covering it up. So Turtle Boy has so many good points, and I agree with them. And it's been hard to say that that's all defamation, because we've seen the facts, we've seen the trial, we've seen the documents, we've seen it all. We've been through it a billion times. It is not possible that John O'Keefe was hit by a car. So we're back at square one. Apparently, even though we've had 2 trials and some really great forensic people telling us that Karen didn't hit John with a car, now we're told by the McAlberts, oh no, she definitely did it and we're innocent. I know I believe Arca over them. That's for sure. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. I think this is just a crazy PR stunt. It's not going to go anywhere, probably. And I think maybe they filed it thinking it probably won't go anywhere either. And they're doing it just to make themselves look innocent. Perhaps that might be the strategy of it. I don't know. But it'll be interesting to watch this unfold. And we will continue the coverage of this, because this part is the interesting stuff. The McAlberts lying over and over again. That's what we want to watch. So thank you guys for watching. Take care. I'll see you in the next one. Bye, guys. That's our Corruption Files update. Another layer of corruption peeled back. Thanks for watching. Let me know in the comments what stood out, and join Justice Insider to get exclusive perks. Catch you in the next one.